our pre-show. So we're just getting going on a absolutely beautiful afternoon. It feels like a completely different day to 2 days ago. 2 days ago we had horrible, cold, windy weather, and this afternoon there is still a bit of a breeze, but it is beautiful and warm, so I am all happy. Taylor and I have an ongoing argument at the moment about winter and summer, so pretty happy that summer is back in full force. And the bush looks incredible after a bit of warm weather today. It seems like things have grown a little bit, and it's all very bright and vibrant and very green, so it's looking very good and very. It has been around here, and if they didn't come down to the dam for a drink at some stage today. Been hanging around quite a lot the last few weeks, and it's been quite nice to see them every day. They got the little baby with them, and they're nice and relaxed, and Taylor's been getting some great sightings on foot. And I know Brent was messing around a little bit and stalking them, so it's good to have them around and see them. They're such interesting animals, and pretty as well. Now, I think that I am going to probably start heading out towards the western side of our traverse. I'm going to go look around for any signs of the wild dogs. I think that's going to be my plan this afternoon. So, but first I want to go and maybe just check around Treehouse Dam and see if there's anything happening there. It's a beautiful afternoon, and with the warm condition, it often drives animals to go and drink. So Treehouse Pan should be a good one to go and have a look at, see if there's any about in the water. So I think that's where I'm going to head first, and then go across to Arethusa from there. Already today, we're quite a Jigger. So Jigger has had a few little technical gremlins in him today, so if he doesn't behave himself, in all likelihood I'm going to have to, as Taylor says, get a stick out and beat him, and beat the gremlins out of him, so that we can carry on with it. What I was saying is that you have warm conditions to wait to water, and once they've been there, then they'll often just sit quite close by in the shade and around in those areas, and from there then into Arethusa, I think, and go and see if maybe the dogs are around. It would be great to catch up with them. I know Taylor had an amazing sighting last night with the moonrise. Now, if they're still around that area, which this morning I believe they were seen somewhere around Arethusa airstrip, if they are still there, because it is almost full moon, the moonrise today will coincide just with sunset, and it should be absolutely spectacular if we're there around that time and we can get those dogs in those big open clearings around the airstrip. So that is my hope and my wish. Whether or not it will come true is anyone's guess. Now, I was saying also is that it's noticeable already this afternoon in comparison to yesterday afternoon. Now, yesterday afternoon I was walking, and we had quite a sort of quiet walk-in with regards to insects. There was very few of them around, but already just driving this afternoon, it's noticeable how many more there are. Lots of butterflies on the fringes of the road flying as I'm driving, lots of insects buzzing around my face as I'm driving, so it is a lot more sort of full of life this afternoon, which is a great sign. I'm sure James will have a wonderful time walking this afternoon. He hasn't been around for a few weeks, so it's going to be a little bit different to when he was last walking, so I'm sure he's going to love exploring all the new areas that are full of water and full of life this afternoon. Alright, so we're going to go across to start the main event, so we'll see you guys a little bit later.
This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. It is a glorious Sunday afternoon here in the eastern Lowveld of wonderful South Africa. This is Safari Live.
Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
All over these clearings we have some wonderful animals. Just gone behind the bush where I'm pointing there are some warthogs. We'll go and see if we can find them. There is the Taylor McCurdy herd of zebra. I'll explain a bit more about them just now. And then off to the right hand side we've got a whole lot of impala. Now while we stroll slowly towards them, I shall inform you that my name is James Hendry. Yes, it is. On camera today we have Herman. Herman is built roughly in the same way as the stick I'm holding is, and also on security detail now giggling is Herbert. He is standing next to us. Out on drive we've got Tristan being filmed by... Who's Tristan being filmed by? I think he's being filmed by Rohan, who's back for a short stint with us. And then we've got David, who you met this morning, and he of course is being filmed by the great Brian Joubert. How you get hold of us, you wonder? How can we ask questions about the creatures that are being seen today? Well, it just so happens that you will have to have a Twitter account. #SafariLive is how you get hold of us on Twitter. Let us have a look. There is a wildebeest as well. There we go. This is the most wonderful sighting of 4 species of herbivores, all of them reveling in the fact that we have had so much rain over the last little while, and so now we have lots for the animals to eat. And 3.5 weeks ago when I left here, or 2.5 weeks ago when I left here, this was starting to get very brown. The grass was starting to get very sparse. Now this herd of zebra has become very relaxed, and Taylor has managed to walk up to them to within sort of 8 meters or so. So I want to see how close I can get because, well, a little bit like Taylor, I like to think of myself as a horseman. And just over there, you can see the warthogs. You see them there? Right, so we're going to go from the sort of smallest camera crew, that is Herman and me and those little warthogs, to, well, the largest presenter on Drive today with the largest animal you're going to see today.
Well, good afternoon everybody and welcome to our Sunset Safari. My name is Tristan and on camera today I have Rowan. So Rowan is, some of you may remember, has joined us before. He was here about 2 years ago and he's come back just to help us out over the next couple of weeks. So nice to have him back on board. Now, talking about large creatures, behind me I have a big elephant bull. Now, this bull, Ellie, has just crossed the road in front of us. It is a very warm day, so what he's done is found himself a small little bit of shade there, and he seems to be feeding along and in the shade as he goes. It's quite funny to watch him because he stopped under a big marula where we've now stopped. He was very kind to allow us to have a bit of space for the shade. It is a very warm afternoon. It's about 30 degrees or 88 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's quite warm today. And so for a big hulking grey elephant, you've got to try and find some nice shade, and that's what he's doing. He's now just stopped and found himself a lovely tree to start feeding on. These big bull elephants are great at eating. That's one of the things they do best. Now, because this is a live safari and we are sitting with an elephant bull, I'm sure some of you out there will have some questions that you would like to ask. Remember, you can ask us on #SafariLive. I'd love to hear from you, and even if you don't have any questions, it's always nice just to hear where you are watching from, and we can then know where our audience is. Now, what you will notice with this big elephant bull is that his ears are actually moving quite a bit. So you see there's this gentle flap happening, and that is because of the heat that is coming down. So being a big, large grey animal, he's unfortunately getting lots of sun on his skin, and that is going to make him quite warm. So when he flaps those ears, he's going to be able to cool the body down. Now I'm just going to move a little bit forward because I want to be able to keep eye shot of him. He's gone behind a bush, which is not ideal for us. But as I was saying, he has a rich network of veins on the back of his ears, and those network of veins hold a lot of blood. So as he's flapping, he's pulling wind over the ears, and that is cooling the blood in the ears down and making him cool. So it works much like the radiator of a car, or the radiator of a car is probably the best way to describe it. And like I say, their cool blood will then go back into the body and keep him nice and cool. So very, very clever system. But the nice thing is today with him is that he does have a bit of a wind that is blowing. So what you'll sometimes see with elephants is they're very clever. They'll stand with their ears out, and the wind will then blow across the ears and help to cool down that body. So very, very clever indeed. Right, we're going to stay with this elephant a little bit longer because I really do enjoy elephants, and it's been a while since I've seen a big bull. So we're going to sit here and admire his colossal size. And while we do that, let's go across to Dave, who's doing his second interview drive. So please all be very, very nice to him, and let's go see what he's got for us.
Good afternoon. My name is David, and I'm lucky enough to have with me cameraman Brian and his magic thumb. So we've got a bit of luck on our side this afternoon. This is a very exciting drive, as this is the second part of my interview drive. This morning, the animal that I was hoping for and wishing for was a leopard, and we got more than that. We got 2 leopards. We got a mother and her young male cub of about 8 months old. So we're on our way to check their last location, and we're hoping that they're still in the area and we might get a visual of them. Let's go. It's been a very hot day today, but the breeze is picking up now, which is awesome. It's cooling things down. Not too windy, just a little breezy. Okay, we're on our way to look for those leopards, see if they're still in the same area. And we're going to send you over to James, who has a wildebeest to show you.
Well, not a wildebeest anymore. I'm sitting here on a termite mound, and all around me that vast array of creatures that we saw a little bit earlier, which I will now prevail upon Herman to show you. There we are. And the herd of zebra are not very excited about coming to see us, but you can see the wildebeest having a bit of a scratch there, and there are all the zebra, and they're all having a rather special Sunday afternoon. It's got a real Sunday afternoon feel about it here. I'm not sure why, possibly because it's Sunday afternoon, and I've been programmed into that, of course, from my early days. But it is just the most perfect afternoon for a stroll. I know there's been mention of it being hot. I wouldn't say it's hot. I'd say it's quite warm. It's about 80 degrees, I think, which I think is very pleasant indeed. Certainly the edge has come off the summer. Carl, you're wondering about whether or not impalas roll in the sand like zebra do. Carl, I don't think they do actually. I think it's largely zebras that do that. Wildebeest do it to a certain extent. I'm not sure that I've seen an impala do too much rolling before. Of course, they do have the horns that would get in the way, but I mean, wildebeest roll, so perhaps that's not a reason why they don't roll. It's interesting though, because when I used to ride horses, it was an indication that a horse had a strong back if it could roll all the way over, as opposed to just sort of lie on its side and roll. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but one of the reasons that people will tell you zebras have been not used as domestic animals, or not fewer attempts have been made to domesticate them, is because they have weak backs. Now, have you ever seen a zebra roll? They flip over all the time. So I don't think that that's the reason. I think the reason they've never been domesticated, of course, is because they're just, well, they don't really like us too much. but for this one herd that is sitting over there. I have to tell you, I could probably sit here all afternoon very comfortably. I suppose I'd need some tea and perhaps some Sunday afternoon cake a little bit later. But other than that, I'd be very satisfied to sit on this termite mound. But don't worry, I'm not going to do that because I know that none of you are going to bring me any cake today or a cup of black Earl Grey tea, and so we'll move along and see what else we can find. There is a smell of stables about the place here. That, of course, is because we are standing in amongst the dung of the zebra. And you can see very poorly chewed. Not very well chewed at all, and that on account of the fact that the zebra is a hindgut fermenter and not a ruminant, which means this has only passed through the gut once. Interestingly, zebra in times of poor nutrition will sometimes engage in what we call coprophagy, which is the fancy word of saying eating your own poo. Yes, we know, of course, that scrub hares do that by default, but zebras will do it from time to time, and of course that's basically the same as ruminating. It just helps the food to go through the digestive system more than once. Good. Let us take a little stroll. Oh, what a very melancholy question from somebody called Sad. Oh, sorry, that's T-H-A-D, Thad, not Sad. I do apologize. Thad, you want to know if we get the Grevy's zebra here? Thad, we do not get the Grevy zebra. The Grevy zebra is only found in East Africa and in very small pockets of East Africa. And it's also the only zebra that has a harem, at least not a harem structure. It lives a bit like an antelope. So a male sets up a territory and then it tries to attract groups of females into their territories. And I think the Grevy zebra looks most like an ass. In other words, it looks much more like a donkey than a horse. This, in my opinion, the bog standard Birchall's or plain zebra is by far and away the best looking zebra that there is. It's the most horse-like. And I don't think there's anybody in the world who would disagree with me when I say a horse is a far better looking animal than a donkey. And the other zebra species, including both mountain zebras, the Cape Mountain zebra and the Hartmann's mountain zebra, they, to me, look much more ass or donkey-like than these ones, which I think look like very attractive ponies, I suppose. They're not quite horse size. There's a southeasterly wind blowing along, and it's quite a strong wind, keeping down the temperature. Rishi, you're wondering if there are more males or females in a zebra herd. Definitely more females, Rishi. The males set up a harem, so there's a stallion, the dominant male, and his harem consists of 3 or 4 females, and then the youngsters. So there are always more females in a herd than there are males. And the males, I mean, unless it's a little bachelor herd, of course, in which case, well, then you're not going to find any females whatsoever. But that's an uncommon situation. And you may be wondering about this rather pathetic stick that I have in my hand. I am hoping to find another one. So while I continue looking for my stick, I believe that David would like to also show you a very large animal.
While James searches for another stick, we were on our way to look for the leopards, and in the true nature of safari, we have come upon something large and also very interesting. At the moment we seem to be looking at the back of a bull elephant. To his far right there was another bull elephant. I haven't managed to sex the other two. They're just standing in the shade. It's been a very hot day. If you look at the back of that elephant, we can see that he has visited perhaps a water hole or even a mud wallow. And using his trunk, he's picked up mud and splashed it over his back. And of course that will help with protection against biting insects, as well as protection against the sun, and it will also help to cool him down. They'll also use their trunk to lift up water, and they'll splash that behind their ears, which of course also helps with cooling. So at the moment they don't seem to be feeding. They're trying to get in the shade. They're standing in the shade of some trees and bushes, and I think they are just enjoying their Sunday afternoon. After a rest, I'm sure they will start feeding again and perhaps go for another drink of water. Tristan's asked a question: do lions take down elephants? Well, lions can't threaten a healthy adult elephant, but in certain parts of Africa, example Botswana, where elephants have to conduct seasonal migrations. During the dry season, they will return to the Chobe River to drink, and in the wet season, they disperse into the bush. And when they have to come back to the river to drink, often the elephants arrive in very poor condition, often very dehydrated and exhausted from the long walk. And these lions will form super prides of 20 to even 30 lions in one pride. And then they can start to challenge elephants. And what they'll do is they will test the elephants. They'll rush them, and most of the time the elephants will chase them off. But they're looking for that one elephant that is really not having a good day. He's dehydrated, completely exhausted, and desperately needs to get to the river for a drink. The lions will pile on that elephant and try to overwhelm it and trip it, get it to the ground. And then they have a chance of killing and of course feeding on an elephant. You can imagine it's a huge meal for the pride. And so, yeah, that would be my answer, Tristan. I don't think that lions can threaten a healthy elephant. Sometimes they will try to go for babies, but of course the parents will form an outward-facing defensive position in order to not step on or bump the baby, because you can imagine the lions will try to create chaos and panic, and if they can hurt the baby, they may be able to get to it. So the elephants are very smart, and I've actually been privileged enough to see it probably around 3 times in my life, where a baby elephant gives off a distress call and the elephants go into immediate outward-facing defensive position to look after that baby. So I think that would be the relationship between lions and elephants. So most of the time, the elephant is the king of the jungle. When he comes along, he will generally chase off lions. Sherry's asked the question: how do elephants stay nourished and they only eat plants and vegetation? Well, elephants have got a very ineffective hindgut fermentation system. And so they only utilize a very small percentage of the plants that they pick up. And so elephants have to eat a huge amount of vegetation. Or you could say a small female elephant could eat somewhere around 100 to even 150 kilograms of vegetation in a day, and a male anything from 200, and obviously the really big bulls can even eat up to close to 300 kilograms of vegetation in one day. But remember, they don't use very much of it. In fact, they only use about 30 to 40% of the nutrients they take in. And that makes them a very important part of the nutrient cycle. Because when you look at elephant dung, often the plant matter isn't even digested very well. And so, that also is the reason that elephants are very important seed dispersers. Some trees, the seeds actually have to pass through the digestive system of an elephant in order to germinate. Okay, so elephants, to answer your question, elephants have to consume a very large amount of vegetation in order to satisfy their nutrient requirements. Debbie in Vancouver has asked, do I have a favorite elephant story? Well, I'd have to say that's a very tough one. Elephants are fascinating creatures. They are highly intelligent, emotional beings. And after spending years in the bush with elephants, I have many interesting stories to tell you about elephants. But some of the more interesting encounters I've had is, as guides, we try not to let elephants come too close to the vehicle. So we normally try to maintain a healthy distance of about 20 to even 30 meters away from elephants. But sometimes we just can't help it. We may get blocked in a situation and elephants come very close to the vehicle. And that can be quite intimidating. And so I think a moment that stands out for me as a guide was the time that I had a very big bull elephant come and stand right next to my vehicle. I told all my guests to keep quiet, sit still, stay down, and he came, he stood right above us, he looked at us, you could see right into his eye, and he actually put his mouth over my head. His tusks were right over my vehicle. It was quite a moment, but I was looking into his eye, and he had a sleepy eye. He seemed to be quite relaxed. And after sniffing us, he had a little smell. He gently moved off and went back to feeding, and did not threaten us at all. And so that was a situation I perhaps should not have been in, but it stands out for me as one of the coolest elephant moments ever that I'll always remember. Right, we're going to stay with these elephants for a little while longer, and I'm going to send you over to James, who has a very interesting fungi to show you.
It also smells disgusting. It is now starting to rot, and Herbert tells me one of the biggest mushrooms he's seen. Here it is, over here. This is the mushroom, and it is now in a state of severe decay. It's rotting, but it's also being eaten by maggots. Now, I don't know what kind of maggots. Can you see them here? That one? These maggots are obviously from a fly of some sort. Let me just move that grass out of the way. And I'll just try and break it open a little bit. They are all over this thing, digging into the flesh. Now, I have a friend who is a vegetarian. Well, she's a nominal vegetarian. She's a vegetarian when it suits her. And if there is mushroom around, that is one of the times that she's prepared to be a vegetarian because, well, you can make sort of mushrooms into steaks, really. And these maggots are clearly of the same opinion. I said to Herbert, can you eat this? He says, yes, you can. I said, well, how? And he says, well, you cook it. So I said, yes, I've got that, but how do you cook it? He says, no, often with timanga. And timanga, of course, are the nuts that you get in marula fruits. So if you were to cook this up and make a marula fruit nut sauce, I think it would probably be quite delicious indeed. Not this one particularly, because it is deeply fraught. That means, fraught is actually a wonderful South African word, which means rotten. And I think that it came from a termite mound. And so I think what happened is that it's come from the bloom, or it's bloomed out of the base of an Odontotermes mound. And there's a little Odontotermes mound. They don't build mounds, of course, but they do grow fungus. And I think that this piece of mushroom has escaped from their little garden, and that's come to the surface, and that's what that is. Other than that, I'm afraid I couldn't tell you much about it. All right, Herman, let's see how steadily you can keep your picture while standing up. That's very impressive. Other than the fact that you nearly punched me in the face with the aerial, you've done very well. Can I put that in your pocket for you?
Sure. Thank you.
Herman is wearing shorts that would be large enough to fit Brent Leo Smith at the moment. So while Herman and I discuss fashion, of course it's very important to be fashionable on safari, let's head across to Tristan, who is of course always very fashionable.
Well, thank you, James. That is very kind of you. I think James is onto fashion because James is sporting new shoes, new shorts, and a new shirt, and he's looking very spiffy. I'm sure you would all agree. He's prancing around like a show pony at the moment around camp, and every opportunity he gets, he tends to just move his shoulders a little bit and puff his chest. He's had a number of nice comments from sorry about that. Like I say, Jigger has a few little gremlins, so every now and then we lose a little bit of reception, so we're trying to stay away from areas where we get it. But as I was saying, James has received multiple compliments on his shorts, and I'm sure that I think he's hoping that somebody will bring it and tell him how good he looks and how dapper he is moving around. Now, oh, hello, elephants. So we were just going along towards Treehouse Dam to see if there was going to be any signs of elephants, and there we have them. Now, they are spread out across this area here. There's some that are down in the drainage line and some that are up on the hill here on the crest. Now, what's probably happened is they've already actually been at the waterhole, and they've probably had a really nice drink. I saw their tracks coming from the western side towards the water, and I was hoping to catch them there, but they've moved on a little bit, and they've now come into this drainage section where it's going to be nice and lush and very, very, very shady and cool, and it'll be perfect for where an elephant would like to spend the afternoon feeding. There you go, you can see what we were talking about a little bit earlier with the ears just flapping very gently, and every now and then you see how they turn and they'll try and put their backs to the wind and the ears out and let the wind do the work, cool themselves. Now, it doesn't look like a very large herd. Oh, is there a little baby there? I think just to the left of that mother there is a baby coming out, so hopefully it's going to show itself. At the moment all I can see is a little ear flapping in the background, but it looks like it's going to follow its mother out. It's a little bit to the left there. There we go. Just see its little ear. Come on, out you come. So it's not a little baby, it's quite big already. I would say that that elephant is probably close to 4 years old, so quite large. You can see the tusks haven't come out just yet, but around sort of 3 to 4 years is when those little tusks will start to show, and it's a good way to be able to age an elephant. When you see those little round white tusks just protruding through, you know, somewhere around there. But you can see it's very, very adept at using its tongue, its trunk at the moment. Sorry, I said tongue. I'm not quite sure why I said tongue. I'm thinking of other things. But it was using its trunk, and it's actually got quite a lot of movement on it already. So you can see by the time they reach 4 years old, they've mastered the art of this muscular nose, and they're able to then utilize it to feed themselves. So this little baby in all likelihood will have been weaned already. It might still be quite cheeky and try its luck and get some milk. When the mother walked across just now, I was just looking at her chest, and she still has quite swollen mammary glands, so there'll still be a little bit of milk in there that will just supplement this baby and keep the nutrient level up. The nice thing for this baby is now, after all this rain, is that there is so much food here for it that it's no longer that vital to get its mother's milk. When we were in that drought period, a lot of these tiny little babies would have really suffered, and it was up to the moms to provide that necessary nutrients for them to be able to sustain and to keep that baby alive. Without those mothers during the drought, there's no ways that those little ones would have survived. They would have had a really tough time. Whereas now, with so much food available and so much variety of food, there's really a lot of nutrients around, and the pressure on the mothers is that much less. Now, what I'm going to try and do is just roll forward a little bit, because we've got quite a few bushes in our way here, so I want to try and get a little bit more open. Now, it doesn't look like a very large herd. It looks like it's quite a small herd. I can only see one other on my left-hand side besides the two that are down in the drainage line. There might be more that are approaching. At the end of the day, these herds, when they are feeding, can be quite split up. They all move to an area where they can at least find their own shade and be able to feed in a shady section. So you often find that there is quite a spread out effect, and only when they're actually going to start moving somewhere will they all come together and vocalize, and the herd will move in a straight line towards where they're going. Turtle Trekken, you want to know if the elephants get sunburnt. Well, this is an interesting one. When you have a big old female like that, then no, they generally don't. They're quite clever. They'll spend a lot of time in the shady areas, and they try and stay out of the sun as much as possible. But when they are little babies, and when I was in Kenya back in my youth, I spent some time at an elephant rehabilitation center, and we had little babies there that we had to look after and try and rehabilitate back to the wild, because their mothers had been unfortunately killed in some way, and normally it involved human conflict. conflict. But those little babies were very sensitive to the sun, particularly their ears. Their edges of their ears, if they spent too much time in the sun, would actually get almost crispy and would be badly damaged from the sun. So what we had to do is we used to have to put sun cream all along the edges of the elephant's ears, and then we used to have to put little blankets over their backs. Now the reason why we had to do that is because when a baby elephant is still small, and you can actually see with this baby here that it is busy standing in the shadow of the mother. So it's using the mother's shadow to stay out of the sun. So when they're very, very small, they stay there until their skin gets used to this harsh light, and they're able to kind of get darker, and the pink ears start to go away, and they then don't get burnt nearly as much. They're also very good at covering themselves with a layer of mud that just helps to obscure that sun and keep them in good condition and their skin in good condition. And that's why you don't see bright red elephants that are burnt in any way. But like I said, the little babies when they're younger sometimes. So Debbie from Vancouver, you want to know why elephants have such wrinkly skin? Well, it's probably due to the fact that they do grow a lot in the summer months. They feed quite extensively, and so they're pushing out a little bit, and then in winter they're going to come down a little bit, so the skin needs to be quite elastic and move a little bit. Also, that skin is very, very thick and abrasive, so it's got to be able to protect them when they walk through these thickets, and that thicker skin just forms these wrinkled patterns as we see here. You can see on the trunk as it's moving up and down, so it's wrinkling. So that is the reason why. It's no other particular reason for it. But look at this female. She's got a nice big swathes of grass, and they will be absolutely loving the rain that we've had recently. You'll find these elephants will be they've taken these big trunks, and they're taking big chunks of grass, and they're feeding off the seeds at the moment, because after the rain all of these grasses are going to be pushing up seeds to be able to propagate and to thicken up, and so those seeds are packed full of nutrients and very, very good minerals and oils that they don't get anywhere else. So what you're seeing is that elephant is putting it in and eating the tops of the grass, and then it drops the bottom. So it's not interested too much in the stalks or the roots, which don't carry nearly as much nutrients as the tops of the grass. Now, when she's turned like that, you can actually see, oh, now she's turned too much, but you could just see her mammary gland there, and you could actually see that it was still swollen, that there is still a little bit of milk, which is what we were referring to a little bit earlier. So as she turns back, you'll be able to see it. Of course, now that I say it, she won't do it, but she's busy negotiating a big stump, so Michelle in Turkey, this is a valid question, I would say. Do male elephants help with raising the young in the herd? Unfortunately not. A male elephant, all he does is he comes in and mates with the female, produces this little calf, and then he disperses out again. He's actually not really a part of the herd in any way. You won't find a male elephant staying with the same family unit like you would with the zebras that James had earlier. There won't be a dominant stallion. There'll just be a male that will come in and mate and then go away. And that's why elephants are probably in herd structures, is because they can then as a group be able to protect their young. They actually don't need the size of the male to defend the little baby. They will be able to do it all by themselves by utilizing multiple big females and encircling those little babies to protect them. So the male unfortunately does not do anything for the female, but for the male it's a good life. He's just a permanent bachelor. He roams around and does what he wants when he wants. Also, the thing about the herds is that the herds move a lot faster, and as males get bigger, they get a little bit more lazy, and they don't really want to move around too much. They're happy if they find an area like this where there's lots of food, lots of water, great environment for them to spend time, great places for them to shelter, and so they don't want to move too fast. But a herd utilizes the resources so much faster than a single elephant, and so they constantly are moving to try and find enough water, enough vegetation to survive, and so they move a lot more, and the males just can't be asked, and they tend to then fall off the back end and don't do too much. Right, so as you can see, these elephants are now disappearing into a little nasty thicket. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to carry on as well. We're going to go try and see if we can go and follow up on those wild dogs. While I'm here, actually, I'm also going to just check if there is any signs of the royal family. Now, they've been in the southern part of the reserve, so I want to go and check there. Oh, hello. There's another one that's just come out now. So while we go and see what we can find and see what there is out there, let's go back across to David and see where he is and how he's doing.
Welcome back. Well, there seem to be a lot of elephants out this afternoon, which is fantastic. Love elephants. Myself and Brian, we're on a mission. We want to find leopard. We saw some tracks back there, but we've heard that they are cutting through this block here, through this bush, and we're hoping to pick up some tracks on this road. Nothing so far, but we are quite determined, and we're going to keep going and see if we can find some leopard tracks, and that may lead us, of course, to their makers. At the moment, elephant tracks everywhere. Well, we couldn't ask for better weather this afternoon. Sorry, I didn't get the name, but someone has asked from London, have I had any dangerous encounters with animals? Dolly from London wants to know, have I had dangerous encounters with animals? Well, Dolly, if you missed this morning's show, I did mention that for me, I think my first encounter with a really dangerous animal was when I was 5 years old. I was at swimming lessons and I found a puff adder, and I proceeded to put the puff adder, little baby puff adder, into a jar using a very short stick. My older brother came along and found me with this puff adder and went and told on me. So my mom was not impressed. So we took this puff adder in a jar to the snake park so that they could identify it for us. And then they weren't too impressed with that either. So I'd have to say my first really dangerous encounter with a wild animal would have to be that puff adder. And from there, I think I've progressed. I caught my first black mamba when I was 12 years old, and from there going into game ranging, elephants, of course lions. I've been charged by black rhino many times. But I think the most important thing, when you actually get yourself into a situation like that, is often there isn't time to think. You just react. And I've come to trust my reaction and my instincts in this job. And I've always managed to make the right decision. I think a particularly dangerous situation that I've once found myself in, I came driving up over a mountain crest, and as I got to the top, I bumped into a group of elephants, and they must have had a family dispute of some kind, and immediately 6 females turned on me and chased me, and I had to reverse very quickly away. All right, we seem to have a bird in the road. I think I know what this is. If you have any guesses, you can send your answer through to, we'll send it through with #safariLIVE. safariLIVE. I think that is a black-bellied bustard. Shame, he had a really nice patch of shade there, obviously trying to keep cool this afternoon, and we seem to have disturbed him, so we'll sit here. I'm sure he'll move off and find another good spot of shade to stay cool in. Sorry, guy. All right, there he goes. Into the grass. As I mentioned before, I'm not from this area. I'm completely new to this area and this biome. And so the birds and the trees, everything is new. So if I get something wrong, please correct me. Send your answer through #safariLIVE. Okay, we're continuing. Looking at the road now, it seems to be a lot of vehicle tracks, and so we're going to keep looking for leopard tracks. Tim says he thinks it's a black-bellied bustard. Tim, I think you're right. And on that note, I have something to show you. I'm just going to stop for a second. This morning, I was asked a question by Chai Connolly. Do I have a bird list? And my answer was no. I've only been here for 3 days. Up here to do an interview drive, which we are conducting, and so I decided to actually put together a bird list of the birds that I've managed to see without even trying in the last 3 days, and here it is. Okay. So in 3 days, I've managed to see 48 bird species. This afternoon we are hopefully going to add a few more to that list. So 48 in 3 days, which I think is pretty good, and I've seen species I've never seen before. Alright, James has got something very exciting to show you, so we're going to send you over to James.
Well, it's not enormously exciting at this point, but it could have been, and it might still be. We have got a pan of water. This is obvious by the fact that you can see water, but we had some buffalo tracks heading towards here, fresh from today, and there's a pan system that runs along this drainage line down towards the east, and so we're going to go along and see if we can't find those buffalo. This is also the spot where there used to be a foam nest frog, and he lived in this tree, and we found him a few times by playing him the sound, and he'd then start to call, but he seems to be gone now. I'm going to ask Herman to come over this side, because there's a rather special little caterpillar in here. And as we do that, here is the caterpillar, Herman. There we go. And it's eating what looks to be, I think, some kind of Sesbania plant. They are normally toxic, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it is a Sesbania, actually. No, it could be. I'm not sure. But I think they're toxic, and I think you'll find, therefore, that the caterpillar is toxic. And in fact, there are a whole lot of them. This is really very interesting. I've just noticed this. Look over here. Ooh. Here's another one eating on or feeding on the pod. In fact, this thing is covered in them. Here's another one, and this one is a totally different color, possibly because the white one that we first started to see is about to molt. Maybe it's about to get a little bit bigger. These are fantastic. I don't know what they're going to be, but here they live. And I think this plant is probably not particularly well liked as a food source. I guess they also sort of look a little bit like the pods. Nice. So they're sitting over the water here, hoping to stay safe. And of course, millions and millions of caterpillars get laid, or eggs get laid. Many millions of those eggs get eaten. Many millions of the caterpillars that then hatch get eaten. Very few actually make it to adulthood to lay eggs again. But it's what we call, I keep forgetting this, I think it's called R selection. It's when an animal has many, many more young than it expects to survive. We are the opposite. We're called K selectors, which means we invest a huge amount in very few offspring. Well, some of us. Let's stand up here. And we're going to move gently along here. And Janet, you're wondering if I have noticed a big difference since my departure 2.5 weeks ago in the vegetation. And well, Janet, yes, I have. It's absolutely astounding how much more grass there is, how much taller the bushes are. And I mean, here's a really nice example. Here's an enormous Panicum maximum culm standing at roughly just under 5 feet tall. There were none of those when I left here. But also these Waltheria bushes, like this one here, they have grown so much bigger and so much more abundant since I've been gone. And they clearly just need to wait for water. And look on this one. I mean, these Waltherias deliver again and again. Look over here at this beautiful grasshopper. You see him there? He's almost invisible. and were it not for the fact that he was moving around, he'd be difficult to see. I'll try and catch him. He might hop away. No, he's hopped away. No, let's leave him. He doesn't want to be disturbed. Anyway, I wanted to show you his eyes, which are these sort of almost contiguous segments on the side of his head. They're almost invisible until you know what you're looking at. So yes, I've noticed a huge difference. Let's continue along here. Herbie's just in front, trying to see if he can't find a sign of the buffalo. And while we very quietly move gently along there, which of course one must do if one is looking at buffalo or trying to find them, we're going to go across to Tristan and find out if he's any closer to those wild dogs.
Well, we are getting closer. I just got a little bit sidetracked because I found tracks for what I think could be Hosanna, these little young male leopard tracks, and they were going up and down the road. Now, some of them were from this morning, and James had driven on top of them, and he told me that he had seen those tracks, but there are some that are on top of his tracks. Unfortunately, they've gone into Little Gowrie and south off of our area, so I'm just checking along slowly westwards just to see if maybe he's come back again and come to any of his favorite little watering holes. He likes to go towards the quarry or towards the little mud wallows off Shabamu Road, so I've checked those. Unfortunately, nothing there. So now I'm just slowly going along, just checking our southern boundary to see if they come back. If they don't, it's taking us towards where the wild dog search is going to take place, and so it's on our route anyway, so worth a try and worth a look. No, it's good to see at least that there are these young male tracks around, and I know that I spoke to some of the guys that operate out in the south, and they were saying that they had tracks for Shongile and Karula and Hosanna, which is great news because ultimately our leopards that we love so much, they had a little run-in with a young male, apparently a skittish young male, not yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning or the evening before, and apparently the young male stole the kill from them. So it's good to know that they're all alright and they're actually around and still doing fine. I didn't see any signs of any damage on the tracks or limping or anything like that, which is great news. So it seems like all went okay, and unfortunately Karula just lost her meal, but otherwise everything is good. But I can't tell you guys what a beautiful afternoon it is. There's actually more leopard tracks that I can see here, but these are quite old. These look like tracks from a few days already. The nice thing about this road that we're on is because it is a divide and it is a main access route for all the lodges, anything that walks here, if it is on top of vehicle tracks, you can be sure that it is very, very fresh indeed, because the amount of movement on this road is that a track would be squashed very, very quickly. So if we do see any tracks, we know they are quite fresh, and these tracks that I was referring to on the side have been driven over, and there's only the odd one that I can see, so those are not very fresh at all. Also quite a lot of wind damage to them. Now the wind has settled down yesterday, so it's prior to that even. Now you want to know about one of my favorite old males. You wanting to ask about the male leopard that made a comeback a few days ago. His name is Mvula, and that's the name that he was given. Now Mvula in this area means rain, and it's got that name because the eyes are a very light color and much like what you would see from rain, and that's where it's gotten its name. Now he actually, apparently I actually got a message yesterday that he went somewhere towards Mala Mala, so he was in that area, so he's not actually too far south of us, just south of Cheetah Plains, so hopefully we'll see him again. He's such a beautiful animal. He's got the most incredible eyes. I always love seeing him just because his eyes are so pretty, so it would be nice if he came back and stuck around for a little bit. But unfortunately for him, because he's an old male now and he's a little bit long in the tooth, he no longer can hold a territory, and so that's why we always get these sort of transitioning periods where he comes in and out, and we get these brief sightings and then he goes away again for a few months. And eventually, unfortunately, with the way that a male leopard's life goes, he's going to eventually run into another male and possibly fight, and we will never see him again, which is a sad thought, but it is a natural thing, and it is something that does happen, unfortunately. Right, so we are going to go into Arathusa now, so I want to just try and quickly get an update from the other guides that are operating in this area, see if I can maybe they've found any signs yet this afternoon. I know that they were found somewhere in this general vicinity between here and the airstrip, so southwards of us. Now, it is a very difficult area to find wild dogs. There's lots of thickets all over here and lots of steep, and it's very, very difficult to negotiate banks in this area called Safari Donga. And so it's not the easiest place to track animals, and even if we find the wild dogs, if they're moving, it's going to be very difficult to keep up with them. But it is a risk that we are willing to take, because wild dogs are always a spectacular sight. Right, so let's see now if we can find any signs of them, and while we do that, let's go back to David and see how he's doing on his second interview drive.
Welcome back to my sunset interview drive here on safariLIVE. Not much has changed for myself and Brian. We have been slowly but surely checking the cut lines. We're on Buffel's Hook cut line at the moment. We're looking for spoor, we're looking for leopard tracks, or even better yet, wild dogs would be great. But nothing so far. So we're making our way in the direction of Buffel's Hook Dam, where we're hoping to get lucky there. So far the road seems to be quite clear. James has asked a question, is there any particular bird species that I would like to see there? Well, James, it's actually not very fancy, but I saw a Senegal lapwing fly off this morning, but I have not seen one sitting on the ground, and I haven't had a clear look at one yet. In the Eastern Cape, we always seem to see crowned lapwing as well as blacksmith lapwing, and so I think I would really like to see a Senegal lapwing, and I think there's a pretty good chance of finding one at the dam. Yeah, as well as quite a few other species that we could find there. So this should be good. Taylor actually told me that I might just be lucky enough to see a flock of, I'm going to try and say this correctly now, it's a bird that I've never seen before, a collared pratincoll. Did I get that right, Brian? A collared pratincoll. Such a cool name. Hard to pronounce for me. And so, yeah, Taylor says that they seem to be flocking at the moment around the dam. We're going to head over to Buffel's Hook Dam now, and who knows what we'll find. Drew's asked, you'd like to know a little bit about my background. Well, I'm from Cape Town. My friends and my family live in Cape Town. But for the last couple of years, I've been working on private game reserves in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, where we have some very, very beautiful private reserves. Nice large concessions, but not nearly as large and well protected as the Kruger National Park. Well, we're not in the Kruger National Park right now, but we are in a part of it, a section of, which is a part of the greater Kruger National Park. And so, as I said before, coming here is just so exciting for me, because this is a different biome to what I'm used to. When you've spent years in one biome, you become very familiar with the trees and the birds and the animals that you find there. And so coming to the Sabi Sands area is extremely exciting for me. My bird list may not be very big, but on there are quite a few species that I have not been fortunate enough to see before in my life. And so this is very cool, very, very cool. And yeah, going back to the question of my history, I actually would have to say that I've begun in a zoo. Spent a few years in a zoo, first as a reptile curator, senior reptile curator. I was in charge of everything with cold blood, from crocodiles and alligators to snakes, as well as the largest breeding collection of tortoises in Africa. And from there I progressed into game ranging or nature guiding. And you know what, nature guiding is addictive, as I'm sure you will agree. When you go out in the afternoon or even in the early morning, it is just one of the greatest feelings in the world, because we know all these amazing animals are out there and they're all moving about and interacting, and no game drive is ever the same. I may have done thousands of game drives and plenty of walks, but no two are ever alike. And so it is always fresh, it is always exciting to get out there. And being up here in the Sabi Sands, there is nowhere else on earth that I'd rather be right now. Alright, enough about me. We're going to send you over to James for an update.
Right, we are in the middle of trying to find some buffalo. We think they are very close by here. And I've just sent Herbert. Well, I haven't sent him. He's gone off up ahead. Just have a quick look, because he's obviously more mobile than we are. And by we, I mean Herman, who's carrying the pack on his back. There is some water not too far from here. There are doves calling. And there were also some grey go-away birds going quack, quack, quack. And that would have made the buffalo just look up. So we are by no means going to attempt a close approach. We're just going to see if we can get a quick view. And we'll let Herbert stay up front there. And I'll show you which way the wind's blowing. We're approaching them almost directly into the wind, which is perfect for us. I think that they're going to be too close to us. Oh, we're going to go around this way. This is how it is if you were on a safari walk. This is how it would be. So you'd put yourself exactly where Herman is. We'd have the tracker in front like this, and I would be making sure that you didn't behave in a dismal fashion. So please don't behave in a dismal fashion. Walk very quietly. You're going to keep your watch where you're stepping. And while you're walking, it's much more important that you check where your feet are going than looking around. Herbert and I will do the looking around. Okay, we're going to get a view here. I'll be very quiet, okay, everyone? That's it, well done. Kawe, careful, careful. That's Herman's sawn off suit pants. Right, come over here. It's going to be a fairly poor view. Okay, right, I can see them. Come over here, be very quiet. Alright, now what we've got here, can you see the triangle formed by those trees? Through there's a green bush, and just beyond that green bush there is a buffalo lying in some water. Can you see it? Okay, you can come over this way. There. Okay, you can see the back of its head there. Can you see that? so very careful here is because we don't have tremendously good cover here, and we don't want the buffalo to become aware of us. Now, if you are on your first walking safari with us, buffalo can be cantankerous. I hate to use the word dangerous because I don't believe that they are inherently dangerous. They just get a little bit more irritated than some people and some animals, and that means that we need to be extra careful about not irritating them. Herbie, we come there. Come over here. Watch where you're stepping, everyone. Can you see it there? Yeah, Herman, come and stand where I am. Now you'll get a good view. No, it's facing the other way. Yeah, Herbie's just trying to find out if it's facing us or the other way. And what's great is that it's facing the other way. But now, while we're standing here looking at this animal, which I know is not the best view of a buffalo you've ever had, it's still not bad because we're on foot. Remember that we saw tracks of more than one buffalo. So while we're walking through here, keep looking a little bit around, but make especially sure that you don't make a noise with your feet. Come. So I'm scanning around. Herbert is scanning around. Watch where you're putting your feet. And if you see something, you just make a natural sound. Just go. There we go. Come over here. Now to go closer than this would be pretty suicidal. Okay, I'm just making a plan with Herbie. Yeah. Alright, we're going to try for another view from another way around. So while we're doing this, let's go. This is so exciting. Let's head back across to Tristan, who's on Arathusa now. We'll try and get a good view of this buffalo.
Well, yes, indeed, James, you better concentrate because tracking buffalo on foot and walking with buffalo is never the easiest task, and so it takes a bit of concentration. You have to have your wits about you. It is quite an exhilarating experience, though, so I'm a little bit envious of James. It is quite fun. Now, we are also on a little tracking exercise of our own, so we are looking for the wild dogs, and they were last left where we are now. Apparently, this morning they had a kill somewhere close to these pan systems that we're at, and so I've just come to check the pans because a wild dog in hot weather like this will often like to go and wallow. So I'm just checking around here. The problem is that it is very, very thick in this area, so it's not an easy area to negotiate or to actually see. You know, wild dogs are not the biggest animals, and if they lie down flat, especially if they had a meal this morning, then it can be quite difficult to actually see them. But I'm just going to try and follow the vehicle tracks and just see if there's any signs of them around here. The good news is that if they did have a meal, then in all likelihood, so these tracks just lead into this thicket and there's no real sign here, but if they did have a kill, then in all likelihood they've gotten a meal somewhere. I mean, they've gotten a shady spot somewhere to go and lie in to digest their meal. So just trying to see if I can find that area. The problem is, after all the rain, is like I was saying just now, a wild dog likes a muddy wallow to go lie in and just to rest near, but after all the rain we have so many wallows and muddy sections and bits of water all over these little donga systems that it actually becomes very, very tough to find these wild dogs in this. So what I'm going to do is just try and snake my way around and see if I can see any signs of them. Now I wonder, I see some vehicle tracks going off here as well, maybe let's follow these quickly and see. And wild dogs do like a bit of sand as well. It's a nice place to lie on. It's often, with the moisture, it can be a lot cooler than it would be lying out on a big grassy area. And there's also less insects and sand, so it can be a lot more comfortable. But it is very, very thick, so careful, Ryan. Just trying to check where these vehicle tracks go, because they seem to just disappear here. But you can see how shady and lush it is in here, so it is the perfect place if you're a wild dog. Cedar Point, you want to know if the wild dogs are hard to track. Well, they're probably one of the hardest. Not when they're actually moving and not hunting, then they're quite easy because they often utilize roads. They like to use the openness of the road. The road is much easier to follow. There's less bits of grass and debris that can get into their eyes. Also, there's no parasites on a nice open road. And then it's quite easy because you can follow their tracks along the road and you can find them. Where it becomes difficult is when they are in areas like this, or if they've been hunting. When they hunt, they're not like a lion or a leopard that will stalk in close and then charge at that animal, and either it grabs it or it doesn't. They're a little bit more chaotic, so they run in and they just chase, and the animal runs everywhere and the dogs go everywhere, and it's just a mishmash of tracks, and so it becomes quite difficult then to get a direction as to where they've gone. So that is a hard part of it. But what I'm hoping is, like I say, is because they've had a meal, I'm hoping that they've laid down somewhere, and that's just, the trick is to find where. You can see where I'm driving is very dense on both sides, and they will be undoubtedly in the shade somewhere. I've just got to try and establish where exactly that shade is. So it might take a little bit of time, but it's worth the effort, because what will happen is, even though they killed this morning and they might be full-bellied this morning, a wild dog has a very fast metabolism because of how it moves, and so it's possible that they then start to hunt again this evening, or in the very least they're going to come out of these thick dense areas and start looking for a little bit more open plains, because they don't want to get caught by lions and leopards in these thickets. They're ultimately a lot smaller than a lion and leopard, so they've got to be a little bit more careful as to where they go. So I'm just retracing the steps of the vehicles that I can see have driven here to see where they have gone and where they ended up this morning. But now if you look at the grass length that I'm driving through, you can imagine a wild dog, which is nowhere near the height of the vehicle, is sleeping in this grass. It's going to be hard for me to see that. So if it is in the grass, I'm going to have a tough time. I'm just going to have to look for areas of flattened grass that they could potentially have been lying in. So while we continue to track and to see where these little puppies have gotten to, let's go back to David, who I believe has found a much larger animal moving around.
Thank you, Tristan. Well, we've also been struggling to find any tracks belonging to wild dogs or even leopards, but it seems to be the afternoon of elephants everywhere, and we've just found these three. They seem to be walking at a bit of a pace, stopping to feed every now and again. I would say they are making their way over to some water. Often at this time of the afternoon, elephants like to go for a drink and perhaps even a last swim to cool down after the heat of the day. Gently flapping their ears, and that obviously is going to help them to cool down. He's swishing his tail. He seems to be a happy Ellie. And off they go. Okay, we're going to get back on this cut line. Taylor Ann's asked the question, when and how do elephants sleep? Sorry, Taylor Ann, I just saw something very tall and spotty walking through the bush over there. Let's see if Brian can get a visual. Brian, would it be better if I move forward? Right, Taylor, and that is a very, very good question. Some people say that elephants can't lie down because they can't get back up again. And I'd have to say that's not true, because I have seen elephants rolling in the mud, even very large elephants. So elephants can lie down and they can get back up again. But now sleeping, often in the heat of the day, you'll find elephants parking themselves in a bit of shade. They will just walk right into the shade of a tree or bush, and there they will just relax, and you could say that they would just nod off and have almost a snooze on their feet. And if you find elephants, if you go out on late night drives, even 12, 1 o'clock, generally if you find elephants, they are still feeding and they are still moving slowly. Although personally I don't like to view elephants at night. I've found that they are quite uncomfortable with the light, but it is still very interesting to go and see what they get up to. But we have also learned that elephants do lie down and sleep. Not every night. Some nights they just continue to feed and move, but they do indeed lie down for a few hours of sleep every couple of nights. And often even a very large elephant can be found lying down sleeping. And what they will sometimes do is actually a big elephant will lie down and use a slight slope or even a tree stump to lever itself up again. So it's quite interesting, but they'll use a rocking motion and they will swing their body weight over and get right back up again. Elephants are far more maneuverable than you would think. I've seen elephants go right up and over mountains. So yeah, that's it. Elephants will have snoozes during the day, parked in some bush, and late in the wee hours of the morning they do sometimes lie down and have a full sleep. Okay, we're going to continue down this cut line. We're looking for tracks of any kind, but we're going to send you over to Tristan, who has a tall, spotty something to show you.
Tall and spotty is correct. So from one large animal to another, we've got a beautiful female giraffe who is absolutely glowing in this afternoon light. She looks incredible. There's just that light is starting to dip now, and the harshness of the daylight sun is just starting to wean a little bit, and so we're getting these golden textures that are starting to come through, and she looks absolutely beautiful. Now, she's not on her own. There are a few more of them in this grouping. They've all moved off a little bit, so I'm going to go a little bit further forward too to try and keep up with the rest of them. There is another female that I saw, and a fairly young little one as well, so let's see if we can see them. Now the good news is that I got another update of where the wild dogs could be. They actually moved a little bit from where I first got the update, and they went a little bit further northwest, so we've gone the opposite direction, so I'm going to have to double back. And I think what I'm going to do is probably do it now, because isn't that incredible? So if you look off to our right here, you'll notice that there is absolutely no sign that there was a giraffe there. It looks like they've just disappeared. So you would think that this animal that is so big and so tall would be really easy to spot out here, but you can see it's very, very difficult. Once they get into a thicket like this and they go behind trees, their camouflage works incredibly well in that broken pattern, and spots that David was talking about are useful then to hide them. So very, very good camouflage. Right, like I say, let me turn around now. So we're going to have to go and negotiate our thick bush again. It's unfortunately the quickest way back to where we are. Otherwise we're going to have to do a very, very long loop around. It's amazing how those giraffes have just disappeared. I actually cannot see one of them anymore. From being right out in the open and very visible to not seeing any of them. And like I say, there was about 5 or 6 of them at first. So quite amazing how they do just disappear. Now I've got to be a little bit careful driving here. A few years ago there was quite a bad accident on this little track that we're on, so you may notice that there are some power lines running here. Now these power lines go to Arethusa, and one of the guys unfortunately drove under the power lines and it got caught on his vehicle and badly injured somebody. So I've got to pay a little bit of attention. I don't want the same thing to happen to me or to Rowan on the back. We've got to keep him safe. It is his first afternoon back, so I don't want to It is his first afternoon back, so I don't want to involve him in too much just yet. So while we negotiate our way back through the thicket we've just come through, let's go back to James and see how that stalk on the buffalo is going.
Safety, of course, is paramount, as Tristan said, and you can hear that I'm talking normally now, which means that we've moved away from the buffalo. We tried to go around the other side. The wind just wasn't good, so he would have stood up and come either looking for us or run away, neither of which we wanted. We checked the other pans, and what we found was a whole lot of tracks of elephants. Here's an elephant track. There we go. And it looked to us like the other 2 or 3 buffalo that were in that small herd had been chased away by the elephant sometime during the middle of the day, probably while they were resting in the water. So that's the story of the buffalo. We're going towards Nchela Pan, which of course means frog pan. And we're just going to see if we can't spot, it actually means toad pan. We're just going to see if we can't spot something there. Herbert is up ahead, he hasn't seen anything. So our plan from here is to move round towards the west and see if we can't find Hosana, because that's what those are the tracks that Tristan had. Adam, you're wondering the difference between an African buffalo and an American buffalo. Adam, they are completely different animals. They are, I guess, sort of related distantly in that they are both even-toed ungulates and they are both ruminants. But these buffalo here are not related at all. Superficially or morphologically, they're different in that they don't have that thick, shaggy coat. The horns are much bigger on an African buffalo. The American bison or buffalo is in fact heavier than this. They weigh roughly a ton each, if I'm not mistaken. It's about 1,000 kilograms, or 2,200 pounds or so. These ones, a big one, will be about 800 kilograms or so, so about 1,800 pounds, 1,600 pounds. And yeah, I mean, that's the basic difference, but it's a totally different animal. They're not related to each other, really, any more than an impala is related to a white-tailed deer, for example, which was very kindly pointed out to me today. I thought that a white-tailed deer weighed about 100 kilograms, the same as a nyala. It doesn't. It is about the same size as an impala. So whoever that was, thank you for your question, and thank you for pointing out my mistake. See, I'm making signs for Herbert so that I can show him. He says there are some elephants down there. We'll see if we can find them. You see them? You can just hear them. So we're going to walk gently down the road here and see if we can't spot the elephants. Oh, there's an impala, which is deeply alarmed by us. Not nearly as relaxed as the one on the clearing. And that's because, of course, well, the other ones we saw were in a clearing. Should we just go straight down the road, Herbie? And, of course, there's another kind of buffalo, and that's the water buffalo, which is an Asian species, naturalized to Australia as well. And if you've ever seen Crocodile Dundee, well, you will know all about the Asian water buffalo and how it's... I'm not going to go through it, but if you go and do yourself a favor, if you're not going to watch the whole film, go and YouTube Crocodile Dundee and the buffalo, and he stops the buffalo by looking at it like this, going vzz, and that's apparently how you stop an Asian water buffalo when it's upset with you. We don't do that here, of course. They'd just be run over. They are domesticatable. They've been used to pull plows, and they of course are used to make mozzarella cheese. Delicious. Although mozzarella cheese is quite possibly the least delicious cheese that there is. So thank you, Adam, for that question. Now I'm just going to let Herbert get a little bit in front of us. Virginia, I don't want to talk about this subject, so I'm not going to address your question. Virginia, I'm very sad about that. I'm very, very sad indeed that Karula visited the tent while I was not there. Of course, Brent Leo Smith told me about the incident within 3.5 picoseconds of my arrival back at Djuma. So I feel a deep sense of jealousy, a deep sense of betrayal, and I have almost the desire to call Karula Judas. Now we've got more buffalo here, spotted by Herbert. He made the sign of the buffalo, that's this. Okay, we're going to go this way. We're going to start talking much more quietly now. We've got much more space now between here and the water than we did last time. The wind is still good. But the impala, which are just near the buffalo, of course, have seen us. So if they react to us, the buffalo will react as well. Thank you, Virginia, for just putting a little bit of a taint on my Sunday afternoon. Watch out, watch out. Of course, we knew Karula was going to eventually come past there. I just didn't happen to be there. Maybe she'll come back. Let's go around here. You can hear the wind blowing, I'm sure. And that's good for us. Okay, we're nearly here. Oh, here we go. Come over here. There's a whole group of them in the pan there. Just stand carefully. There, you can see them. They can't see us though. Well, they could if they looked up. But they're all very relaxed there in their pan. And for those of you wondering, a pan is a natural depression that holds water full of clay. Another buffalo on the far right-hand side is the one that we're going to watch most carefully because his head is almost turned towards us. But because he won't smell us from there, we should be fine. Now, if he was to pick us up from there, he would almost certainly stand up and look this way, by which stage we'd be 10 meters back behind cover and moving quickly. So as soon as we became aware that he was aware of us, we'd move immediately. Because sometimes what they can do is they will all stand up then and come and try and find you. And all through the background you can hear, perhaps, the white-browed scrub robin and the wind and the autumnal, well, the sort of autumnal light. It's much softer than summer light. It's because the angle, of course, of the sun is changing. So I'm just going to move in front of the camera so you can see me. We're standing now, no, we're not going to go any closer. We're standing now about 60 meters or so from them. And I know it's not the best view, but again, what we don't want to do is expose ourselves. Now my face is in the sun. And of course, being of, Caucasian ancestry, it means my face will reflect the sun. And were that buffalo to look this way, it will almost certainly see the sun reflecting off something that didn't look quite right. And so it is best to stay in the shade, but we're a sufficient distance here for it not to be a problem. Isn't that cool? Alrighty. I don't think we're going to get a much better view of them, so I think let's move out. So now what we're going to do is just move into cover here. And as we move into cover, we'll head think is still on the hunt for leopards. Whether he's found anything or not, I don't know. But I know that he will tell you.
Thank you, James, and you are quite correct. Myself and Brian are still hot on the hunt for leopards, or at least their tracks. But so far, not so good. We just checked Buffelshoek Dam, which looked really beautiful, but unfortunately was leopard free. So we are now continuing along this bumpy road in search of spoor, which of course is tracks. We'll see what we can find. It's getting quite thick over here. Brian and I were just discussing the pros and cons of good, healthy rain. Rain is fantastic for the wild animals, but it really makes guiding a little bit more difficult. Cheetahs, for instance, when a cheetah lies down and you're searching for a cheetah, you're just looking for his head, because a cheetah can never fully relax. There's just too much danger out there for him. Lions, leopard, and even hyenas would be a threat to a cheetah. And so we were considering looking for cheetahs just now, but even a cheetah would just disappear in this tall grass. So that makes things a little bit more difficult, but we're having a look up these big, beautiful marula trees, hoping to spot a tail. Just got a question from Debbie in Vancouver. What is the most difficult animal to track? Well, I would have to say snakes. I absolutely love tracking. And as far as tracking goes, I'm nowhere. There's a lot of learning and experience that goes into it. It is absolutely an art when it comes to tracking, and of course the best at the game would be bushmen, but we're trying to learn and catch up. And so of course the easy things are elephants and rhino and your large ungulates, but I think a very tricky animal would be snakes. Okay, because often you see a pattern, a little curve. Obviously some snakes move with serpentine movement, or rectiliar, or even concertina movement. And so for me, I think a snake track is one of the hardest, because when you see that S shape going through the sand, you just almost wish you could see who made it. And that's what tracking is really about, is you're basically going with an educated guess, a good, healthy, educated, well-educated guess. But it's always a guess. Unless you saw who made that track with your own eyes, you're just guessing. And so I think that for me, the most difficult animal to track in the bush is definitely snakes. Ooh, we're just going to navigate through this bumpy section here. One thing I will say about tracking, here in the Sabi Sands, it's very, well, sandy. Oh. Talking about producing tracks, we've got two birds laying down some tracks right now. Tracking isn't all about large animals, elephants and rhinos and zebra. Sometimes the more tricky things can actually be birds. Alright, and again, I'm going to throw this out to viewers. What bird do we have here? Send your answer, hashtag safariLIVE, and help me out. What bird do we have here? We seem to have a pair of them. Moving along down this sandy road, feeding, scratching. Oh, they've got excellent camouflage. If they even look at that grass, they seem to blend right in. Oh, there's a nice rouse. What birds do we have here? also being serenaded. We've got fantastic. All right, Marcy says that they are crested francolin. And Marcy, I'd say that you are right. That definitely looks like a pair of crested francolin to me. And again, that's another bird that I'm not familiar with. We don't get to see crested francolin in the Eastern Cape. So very exciting to see a pair of them. They seem to be very chuffed to themselves. Moving down this road, let's see if we can keep up. Thank you, Marcy. We're just going to move slowly along this road again. Don't want to disturb them. There they are. I'm sure they'll move off. Let's get a little bit closer. Okay, no, they seem to be having too much of a good time to disturb them. Crested francolin. Thank you, Marcy. I was told that we had birding experts. Oh. Almost came running straight towards us. These two seem to be very comfortable with the vehicle. They really don't seem to mind us being here. Scratching about, looking for seeds dropped by these grasses. Of course, everyone is really happy with the rains. The grasses are growing, so it's good times for the animals of the Sabi Sands. They can now fatten up. All of these creatures have been through a really tough time with the drought that we've had in South Africa. Luckily, this area has had some really good rain. The dams are full. There are puddles everywhere. Alright, while we patiently wait for these crested francolin to move off the road, we're going to send you to Tristan for an update.
It's amazing how cheeky those little francolins can be when they stand in the road like that and they don't move off. They can be very naughty. Now, we haven't found too much. Well, I haven't seen any signs of the dogs. I've checked the entire area. I can't find any tracks, but one of the other guides found a track where they were lying this morning, and he's told me that they've come south towards where we are now. So we're just slowly checking just to try and see. The road here is quite hard, so I think that maybe they've already gone up towards the airstrip, because the movement that they're making is towards the airstrip. Like I was saying earlier, they do like to go to places where it's a little bit more open when it starts to get a little cooler. What's this now? No tracks there. Now, it's quite funny, this road is a road that has some fond memories. Hello, Chris.
Can you call Roy? Just up, you see that knocked on there?
Yeah,
I saw them there.
they're there.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Chris, you're a champion. Thanks. So Chris from Arathusa has said he spotted them, which is great news. So they are just round the corner, which is fantastic. It's very good. Now I can see Roy is just ahead of me as well, so we should be able to find them together here, which is good. Now I'm very excited if they are here. He said to me they're somewhere here close to this knobthorn. I just got to keep my eyes peeled. I think Roy has spotted them, which is good. So the nice thing about working with the other guides is that you're able to cover a lot more distance, and they're checking roads a little bit further afield to where I was checking. Now, what's quite funny is that these dogs, when we were driving earlier, they're now on the southern side of that little section that we were looking at earlier when I was going through that riverbed. They're just south of that. Where have they lay? Sounds like they're lying in here somewhere. Did you find them? Chris said he saw them. Chris? He said that he saw them here by the knobthorn somewhere. There, you see them? There we go. So Roy's now seen them, but whether we're going to be able to get into here is anyone's guess. It's a very thick, dense area, and it's not going to be one that's going to be easy to negotiate. So we're just going to try and see if there's a way through. Roy's just going to try and blaze a trail for us, but that's very exciting. Like I said, it's a perfect time of day. It's actually being delayed a little bit with our tracking has actually really done a good thing for us, because it's now the time that they should start to wake up, and hopefully they're going to come out of this horrible stuff that they are busy lying in at the moment. It would be very, very nice of them if they did. So I'm trying to just see if... Alright, so I think while we try and establish ourselves in the sighting here and see if we can get to where they are, let's go back to James and see if he's got any little critters on his bushwalk.
I don't have any critters, but you see, the advantage of being a small fellow like Herman and I is that you don't have to fight your way through the bush. You just silkily, smoothly move your way in between. Now, we're on the trail of a herd of elephants that was around here sometime, and what we're going to do is just peer over the top of this termite mound into the drainage below and see if we can't spot something there. Herbert is just hydrating himself behind us. Oh! No, I didn't see anything. I was attacked viciously by a plant we don't see very often, and this plant is called the woolly caper bush, the woolly caper bush, or Capparis tomentosa, and it grows on these termite mounds, and it can get very large. Eventually it will creep. In fact, this is the plant. Look over here. That is the plant there. And eventually it'll get woody, but it's unable to stand on its own, and so often you find it in very thick areas. You'll find it growing up into trees and hanging down with this sort of thickness, as a sort of Tarzan-like how do you say the word? Lion. Let's move that out the way so that it doesn't remove Herbert's head. Not Herbert's, Herman's head. I just realized, of course, Herman and Herbert together. But here we are, standing on the edge of the drainage line with no elephants. But what we can see is that the great Molwamati drainage line did in fact flow. Now, I'm sure many of you actually saw that. I'm quite sad I wasn't here to witness it. This would be a perfect place to sit and have that cake that I asked you to bring me with a cup of black Earl Grey tea. Thank you so much for bringing it out to me and making all my dreams of a Sunday afternoon tea here on the termite mound of the banks of the river come true. Okay, we're going to turn around here. Janet, well, we do need to be careful of these things. You say, are we concerned about snakes on bushwalk? Look, we have to watch out, but snakes universally dislike us. And what that means is that we are normally pretty safe from them. Obviously, we don't go poking around in holes and things where they might be. And when we do see them, they're almost always running away from us. The major danger would come from something like a puff adder, which is most closely related to an American rattlesnake, and they don't move, or they try not to move. And so if you stand on one, they can sometimes strike out and bite you, but they will warn you. And it's amazing, I've told this story before, but the first time I nearly stood on a puff adder, it hissed at me, and they puff, they go, and I'd never heard the sound before, but my body knew exactly what it was. And the snake was, let's say the stick was the snake, and I put my foot that close to its head. And it puffed at me, and I did that, obviously, and then I went cold, and my toes started to tingle, but the snake didn't strike. They don't want to bite us, and so yes, we do have to be careful of them, but almost always they're absolutely fine around us. Now, quite astoundingly, we have not managed to find the elephants, but David has managed to find, I think, his third elephant sighting of the afternoon.
Well, this is my third elephant sighting this afternoon. I feel like the elephant whisperer. We found a small family here, and with them, they actually have some very small babies. While the large females are focused on feeding, as we discussed earlier, they have to eat a very large amount of vegetation each day to satisfy their nutrient requirements. But for babies, there is time to play. So as this herd moves through the bush, the babies will play and also take naps. But for the adults, they've got to focus on feeding. So these calves that we're looking at here, they haven't developed tusks yet. The tusks will begin to show at approximately 2 years old. They'll just pop out. But these guys don't have tusks yet, so I'm going to estimate their age. The largest one probably being around 8 months old, and the smallest one maybe about 6 months. I find that elephants tend to actually group their babies together according to age. So generally you'll find two 6-month-old elephants playing together, and then maybe 2 1-year-old elephants playing together, and so on. And I think the reason is, of course, so that a larger young elephant does not hurt a smaller baby. So they pair up according to size. Mary's asked, how long will a mother elephant feed her baby or suckle the baby for? Well, the answer is approximately 2 years. But I've even seen very large babies still trying to get a drink from mum. And that is one of the loudest elephant sounds I've ever heard, is in fact a mother elephant trying to wean her calf. The baby will have to come in from behind mom's front leg. As you can see, they've got the mammary glands. Brian, if you can zoom in there. There we go. Mammary glands are found between the front legs of an elephant. So the calf will approach from exactly where we're showing you, just from behind there, and go in for a drink. But when the calf is too big, what mom will do is she will actually pinch that leg off. She will cut the baby off, saying that's enough. You need to focus on feeding on vegetation now. You're too big. And the babies don't always take that lightly. Sometimes they can get very upset. And so, as I say, I've heard a young elephant, it sounded like it was being murdered, but in fact it was just throwing a big tantrum as mom was trying to wean the little guy. One thing, this isn't very pleasant, so if anybody's eating, Monty wants to know, how many hours a day do elephants feed? Well, I don't think there is a fixed number, because remember that elephants... Sorry, we're going to have to cut to Tristan. He has managed to find wild dogs. Over to you, Tristan.
So, very luckily for us, the dogs have come out into a beautiful open clearing in this great afternoon light. And isn't this amazing? Now, this pack of dogs that we're following is the Sands pack. So this is the pack that Taylor had last night, not the pack I had yesterday morning. It's a completely different pack. And there's one that's come out in the open now. It is absolutely beautiful light on them. It's quite spectacular. I absolutely love the markings on these wild dogs. They all are very unique. Each one's got its own little unique pattern on it that's almost like a fingerprint, and they are incredibly beautiful. So it is quite spectacular to have finally caught up with them. And now the pack that I had a few days ago, well, yesterday morning, sorry, they were very mobile and they moved around like crazy, and we had a very short sighting, so it's quite nice to actually catch up with them when they're resting a little bit and not moving too much. So it's really, really good to have them. And they're getting to that stage of the day, like I was saying earlier, that they're starting to wake up. You can see they get up and then they move a few paces, and then they lie down again, and they get up and move a few paces, and then they lie down again. So it's going to be like that. They're going to start moving. And you can see, even though they managed to kill this morning and they had that impala carcass that I was talking about earlier, they have digested quite a bit of it. Their bellies are still quite heavy, but they have digested, and they will hunt again should they get the opportunity. So as they're walking along, if they spot a herd of impala in these thickets, they most definitely will start to hunt. And you can see that's more likelihood one of the alphas, or the alpha male. You can see he's a big male, got quite tatty ears, and they normally are the ones that lead. So you'll find the alpha female and alpha male up front, and when they start trotting, the rest of the pack will stand up and move with them. Now in this part of the Sands pack is actually split recently. Most of the puppies are actually still with them. So the pups that were born last year, they are still here. I'm not sure how many they actually are. I haven't seen the Sands pack in ages. The last time I actually saw this pack was probably this time last year. So it's over a year ago that I saw them. And so their composition and the number of adults and puppies that are here has changed quite drastically since I last saw them. But you can see now also when they lie down, look how they actually disappear and how they have completely hidden in this grass. So what I was saying earlier is that if you drive in that long grass, and this grass is quite short in comparison to what we were driving in earlier, had they been lying in that, it would have been quite easy to miss them. So luckily for us, they've come out to a more open clearing. And it's funny because all the vehicles were busy converging onto this open clearing at once to try and see if we could find them, and luckily we did. But look at the size of the ears as well. That's one of my favorite parts of a wild dog, are these massive ears that they have. They utilize those to be able to listen to what's going on. And isn't that spectacular, that dog in the light like that? Absolutely beautiful. Now, it's sniffing around, and there was another dog that went there already to check what was going on. Now I wonder if maybe there's some termite activity that is causing a little bit of noise that the dog is investigating, or it's possible that one of the other dogs has maybe scent marked there before, or another pack has scent marked, and that's why it's busy sniffing and smelling. But I think it's actually termites, because you can see it's trying to break open the bark, and it's busy trying to pry it open to see what's inside there. So maybe it's interested in the sound that the termites are making as they move around inside that tree. You can actually see that on the bottom of the screen there, how the damage from the termites is there. But that is absolutely beautiful. Like I say, the light is spectacular at this stage, so I'm really happy that we are here now with them. So, Bobby, you want to know, based on size, what kind of dog these would be, what we could compare them to in terms of size? I would say that your best bet would be about the size of a Labrador. Not quite as chunky as a Labrador, a little bit slimmer and thinner, but that is about the size that they are, is a Labrador height. And then, like I say, a little bit more slender. They've got to build more like a greyhound in terms of the way that they're built. Very, very small, slender animals that rely on being very fit and very, very healthy to be able to hunt what they need. So they're not huge speed animals, and they're not animals that rely on strength like lions or leopard to pull down large prey items. They work as a pack rather to be able to do that. Now, what I want to do is roll forward slightly. Feeder, indeed, the pattern does help. It's very, very good. Now, you see when they're walking, you can see the pattern quite easily, but as soon as they lie down, that broken pattern actually makes them disappear a little bit. So it just changes up their outline, and so that helps them camouflage a little bit better. But you must remember, with wild dogs, when they're hunting, they're not an ambush predator. They're not like the leopards or the lions that are going to stalk in very, very close and try and get as close as possible before they launch this very fast attack. The wild dogs rely on a situation where they'll cause panic and chaos. So let's say they had trotted onto this open area and we had a whole bunch of impalas here, they would have exploded through here and they would have panicked these impalas and made the impalas bombshell outwards. And then what they do is they try and chase, and you'll find multiple dogs chasing multiple different individuals from that impala herd, and eventually in the chaos what happens is that these impalas turn and run, and because there's so many dogs, they end up running into one of the dogs, and the dog then grabs it and pulls it down, and the rest of the pack arrives, and then they all start to feed. So that's how they hunt. And so camouflage is not the highest priority for them, and that's why those big black ears which stand out in the grass is not too big a problem. Now the reason why they have big black ears, oh, they've all just gotten up quickly, and I wonder if something has just alerted them. I don't hear anything or see anything around us, but they definitely were quite alert there. You see how they have that sense when one dog reacts that they must all react as a pack, and that ensures that none get left behind or hurt. So quite amazing that they are that tight-knit unit and they pick up cues from one another. Now you can see the little puppies, they are the ones at the middle there, and then the adults moving off to the right. So that's a little puppy that's coming into frame now. You can see how quickly they grow. But look at the face. You can see the face is very, very young. Now, interestingly enough, with wild dogs, here in the Kruger National Park, everyone will kind of quote as saying that wild dogs will live to 11, 10 years old, but they actually don't. For a wild dog to get to 5 to 7 in the Kruger is actually very old. The average lifespan for a Kruger wild dog is in that range, 5, 6 years old, which is very, very young. And that's part of the reason why their numbers are not recovering very quickly. They unfortunately get attacked by a number of different predators, so they have a lot of problems with hyenas when they're denning, lions, leopard, and then obviously they are very susceptible to disease which is passed on by domestic animals. So in these reserve areas that we're in, we do have boundaries where there are villages and there are dogs that run around there, and unfortunately some of those dogs have rabies or canine distemper, which is lethal to a pack of dogs. And the reason why it's so lethal to them, and maybe not as much to things like a leopard, is because the dogs are very social and they're constantly in touch with each other, grooming, licking, and that causes them to pass on disease very, very fast, which inhibits their numbers quite quickly. But they are beautiful. I absolutely love dogs. I know a lot of people are not a fan of them, but for me they are. Look at the male. So Claire, you're wondering if all wild dogs have the same pattern or if each one has a specific pattern. Well, yes, they do have a specific pattern. As I was saying earlier, they have their own fingerprint. So if you look at these two dogs lying here, you can see the female, which is lying at the back side. She has a very big white patch between her shoulder blades. Now, if we come across to the male, between his shoulder blades, you see it's just little small white patches around those shoulders. So it's completely different markings there. And all the other dogs will have varying patterns of this beige, black, and white. So they all look a little bit different. And that's how they recognize one another, and also for us, how we can recognize which packs we're looking at and who the individuals are. Now this pair that we see lying here is the alpha pair. So it's the alpha male on the left and the alpha female on the right. You can see they're slightly older dogs by their tattered ears that they have, and even the muzzle is starting to go a little bit grey. So these dogs are probably 4 or 5 years old already, and they will be the ones that lead the pack. And he looks as though he's had a long day, doesn't he? He's looking as though, I'm tired, I don't really want to wake up now, but the sun is in my eyes and it's all a little bit too much. A very sad face, my boy. Don't be so sad. You've got a nice full belly and a lady next to you. You should be happy. You can see the grey that I was talking about on the muzzle on her. And the flies must be driving them crazy. When you've got such large ears, these flies gets into the ears and really drives these guys crazy. You can imagine lions and leopards, they have it bad, but when your ear is that big and that sensitive to sound, it must be very, very, very irritating indeed. Now, our comms here on Arathusa are not spectacular, so I know that Lou did ask me a question about the alpha male dying, who will take over, but I did not get who asked the question. So Lou, if you can just repeat that for me. So Lauren, you are asking if any of the alphas die, which one will take over. So if either a male or a female will take over, which one will it be? Generally, it's from within the pack. So you'll find that there will be a secondary female, a beta female, that does actually breed sometimes. So even though it's normally just the alpha male and alpha female, the beta female will breed at times too, and you'll get a secondary litter. So if the alpha female had died, the beta female will just pull into her place, and a secondary female will then come up into the beta female status. With the alpha male, if he dies, either a higher ranking male within the pack will then join up and become the alpha male, or you might find another male that is distributed out from another pack comes in and joins and takes over as the alpha. But it does happen quite regularly, and I actually saw in a different pack down in the south of the reserve one of the alphas being killed by a lioness, and the male was killed, and it didn't take long. It was within a few weeks a new dog had assumed that role, and it was one of the males from within the clan that had taken over and become the alpha dog. But aren't their ears just funny? Just don't ever stop, do they? Fidgeting all the time. And it's quite like a wild dog. The wild dogs are never very still, and they're not like the lions or the leopards that can pass out and sleep for long periods of day. These guys are always up to something, and even when they're resting and sleeping, they seem to be quite twitchy. The light on them is absolutely spectacular, though. Right, so we're going to stay with these dogs a little bit longer, and we're going to see, hopefully, if they're going to get up and maybe start hunting for us. And while we do that, let's go back across to James and see how he's doing on his bushwalk.
How I'm doing is that we're on our way home, and if you look over there, before I fall in a hole, you can see that the sun is sinking gently over the western horizon, so we're heading north towards home. We did see a buffalo again, just round the corner, the same one that we first saw, and Herbert is just watching out from there and seeing that he hasn't come to investigate us. And here we go through some very thick bush. Now, before I went away, this grass would have been about knee-high, a few things thigh-high. Now it's up to my chest in many places, and that means, of course, that there are going to be many ticks around. But for some reason today I have failed to pick any up, which is excellent. I don't know if you remember my last walk before I went on leave. I was so covered in them that I was convinced I was going to spend my entire leave sitting trying to recuperate from tick bite fever, but no, luckily that did not happen. So we're just getting around where this buffalo was, and then we'll stop and find some biology to have a look at. Right, I think we're safe over here. Right? We're okay. Now, let us go along with the sort of principle of thinking to ourselves that if there's a Waltheria bush, there will be something entertaining in it. Let us pick this Waltheria bush and see if we can't find something here. Oh, and while we do that, I'm just going to tell you all that I'm very upset that none of you have noticed my new outfit. New shoes. New short, shirt. No one's commented. Sometimes I don't know why I bother. Thanks, everyone. Louise says she's checking Twitter now. Hasn't seen any comments. I'm afraid this Waltheria bush is not delivering. Ah, here we go. Herbert's found something there. What have we got, Herbie? It was a jumping spider. It was, or it is? Ah. Is it on here? There it is. It's here, underside. Can you see it there? It's not a spider, it's a weevil. It's a little weevil. Let me just move it so I can see it. Oh, it's gone. It's a little weevil making its living on this Waltheria plant along with a caterpillar. I told you it would deliver, and it has indeed. There is a little caterpillar growing on the Waltheria bush. It's probably one of the acrias, They like to live on Waltheria on account of the fact that it sequesters hydrogen cyanide. Hydrogen cyanide, which of course is not very good for you if you eat it. It results in a condition known as death, which no one really wants. Good. There we are. Put him back there. You can see how long the grass is. The Pogonathra squarosa, or herringbone grass. Thank you, Bobby. You say you haven't seen my shoes. Well, I'm going to show them to you, Bobby, because you, of all of our viewers, have shown an interest. Behold. They're in that sort of new phase at the moment, so they don't look particularly bushy or wonderful, but there they are. They're giving me blisters, as all good new shoes should. Thank you, Bobby. Let us carry on. I'm very pleased that the wild dogs have been found. It is excellent news. But we're heading back out onto the road because we need to now make tracks for home, as the sun has now set. Careful there, Herman. Do not fall over. Let's just have one last look over here. Here we go. Just next to my stick there is a bug, and it's feeding on this hare's tail bush. And the hare's tail genus I've forgotten. It's something like Cryptophagia or something like that. Cryptophagia augustifolia is the specific name. I quite like the name augustifolia. And this bug seems to be drilling into the flowers and drinking what little sap there is. Every little thing out here has got something that wants to eat it. Ooh, here's something else. It is absolutely astounding. I'll tell you what. Stay that side, Herman. It's just over here. There's a little... You see my finger there? I don't know what that is. This is where we need the microscope, of course. Can you see it, Herman?
I can.
I don't know what it is. I think it's definitely an insect of some sort with red eyes. We'll call it Cyrus. As I say, the Waltheria never fails to deliver. And then there is a spider. Now, how the spider survives in anything other than a vacuum, I cannot imagine. Can you see where my finger is? There is a spider roughly 0.5 millimeter long, living in between the two digits of Digitaria eriantha, and it's in the same family as the golden orb web spider. We know that, of course, because it has made itself an orb web between the two digits of this grass culm. All the orb web spiders live in the same family. Isn't it amazing that that one spider, 1 millimeter long, is the same family as the golden orb web spider? I think that's rather fantastic. Good. Let's carry on. Okay, we're going to make tracks towards quarantine at quite a speed now to try and get there before it gets dark. While we do that, David is somewhere knocking about. I'm not sure what he's found this time. It isn't elephants.
Thank you, James. Well, the sun is setting in the sky. Myself and Brian, we've been very determined this afternoon to find leopard, or at least some tracks. We've just checked the twin dams, where we found yet again more elephants, which I'm not complaining about. I love elephants, and a nice large herd of, a bachelor herd of impala. But right now, we have made the decision to make our way towards the hyena den, where we're hoping to maybe get a glimpse of the cubs. I did see some fresh hyena tracks just now, and with Brian guiding me, we should be there soon, and we're hoping to see a hyena, of course. It's very windy here, quite windy and bumpy. Brian, straight on. Alright, we're gonna go straight through this section. Well, the wind has calmed down and the weather could not be better. Perfect warm temperature. The wind is almost non-existent. Maybe a light breeze. I know Taylor's been wishing winter upon all of us, which I don't think is very fair. I'm definitely a summer child. Turn it up, I love to burn. I'll never complain about the heat because I don't like the cold. And so we are definitely enjoying this warm Sunday afternoon. Right, no tracks at the moment. We're going to keep on making our way towards the hyena den. Of course, with the sun setting in the sky and things starting to get darker, this is a period of high activity in the bush, because you get to witness the change of shifts as diurnal animals start to close down and nocturnal species become active. And so this is definitely one of the best, just going over some roots there, this is definitely one of the best times of the day to be on safari. And so we're hoping to get lucky. Ooh, it's getting dark now, might actually have to bring out the spotlight. Left. Alright, we're at a dam now. What have we got there? Oh! Brian, did you get that? It seems to be a grey-headed kingfisher. He just went for a splash. Now he's sitting on that perch over there. I'm sure he's going to start to preen his feathers. Oh, he's off. Just over there, bro. Well, we have 10 different species of kingfisher in South Africa. And these kingfishers that we're seeing here in the Sabi, you actually don't find in the Eastern Cape. The common species that I tend to see are pied kingfishers, half-collared kingfishers, giant kingfishers, and even pygmy kingfishers. But here in the Sabi Sands, we have the privilege of seeing different species, like this one, and of course one that is really impressing me is the woodland kingfisher, which has, I think, a very beautiful call. There we go, preening the feathers now. Okay. On second thought, having a closer look now, this looks like it could be a woodland kingfisher. Perhaps a juvenile, which I'm not accustomed to. Feel free to correct me. You can send your answers or thoughts through to, or just your answer with hashtag safariLIVE. That kingfisher's taking care of his feathers, which is very important for a bird. Having a splash like that, hitting the water hard, can help to dislodge parasites. Finding a nice perch with a good view. Obviously this kingfisher still needs to look out for predatory birds. And I can start to take care of his feathers. Okay, Brian, as much as I love this kingfisher, I think that we should hit the road again. I'm very keen to go to that hyena den and see if we've got any activity there. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to head towards that hyena den and hopefully there is some activity there. We're going right here, Brian? Yep. Okay, we're moving on. See some tracks in the road. Alright, we're going to send you back to Tristan, who has the wild dogs.
Indeed we do, and things have not gotten too active just yet. We've had a few up and down. The alpha pair had a little scent marking session. You can see the male is busy sniffing now where the female urinated. So they have been doing a bit of scent marking, and maybe he's going to do some more for us. Let's have a look. There we go. He's busy just marking territory. So a small little bit of urine that's come out there just to mark over where the alpha female marked, and to make sure that if any other wild dogs come here, that they know that this is this pack's territory. And it's a funny way that he does it. You see, he doesn't really cock a leg. He tries to, but he gets a little bit distracted and just kind of urinates between the two of them. It's quite interesting to watch. But there really hasn't been too much movement. Now, the rest of the pack has been up and down, and the alpha pair have been sleeping. But now I see the alpha pair is up, and that generally could mean a sign that the pack is going to start getting up and going. When the alpha pair start to move, particularly the alpha male, then the rest of the dogs tend to start following. Are you curious, my boy? He seems to be coming a lot closer. Now you can see he's got a little gash on his backside there. Ah, Jason Bagg. Well, Jason, hello, how are you? I'm actually sitting in the sighting with your other friend, Armand. So Jason is a guy that I used to work with in this area, and he wants to know whether these dogs are close to Boerbean Pan. Jason, they're actually on Magic Willie Open, so you will know exactly where that is, and it's great to have you watching. And Jason is a good friend of mine and an absolute gentleman and an amazing guy. He's a very, very good guide as well, and he's now moved back to Johannesburg, so we don't see him nearly as much as we used to, but he's a really, really wonderful individual. So nice to know that you're watching, Jason. I hope you're well, hope things are good, and I hope you're enjoying the wild dogs. He always used to say that when we find these kind of things that we were taking a wicket, because he and I loved cricket, so we used to talk about taking a wicket, and that we used to bowl these in-swinging Yorkers if he found a leopard. So it's fond memories to hear your name, Jason, and like I say, I hope you're very well. Now, you see how the male always goes and lies with the female, eh? Now, I'm sure at this time of the year, this female is going to start coming into estrus cycles. It's about the right time that they should start mating. End of March, beginning of April, to be in time for the sort of May, June, July denning season. So that's maybe why he's lying so close to her, making sure no other male sneaks in there at any point and gets lucky. So he's lying right behind her and keeping all the others at bay at the moment. Now, there's two that are having a little game in the background there as well. They're busy playing and biting one another. So games will start as it gets cooler now. The sun has dipped below the Drakensberg Mountains to our west, and look at that, there's a little game that's playing. Now those are two younger dogs. Those are from last year's litter, and one is not interested in playing. It's just this one that wants to cause mischief. But enough mischief causing, maybe we'll wake the rest of them and we'll see them getting up and going. Nope. And back to sleep again. Like I say, they do have quite full bellies, so I was hoping that maybe something would come out close by that they would be able to start hunting. But with bellies like this, and the fact that it's going to be a very bright moon tonight, so in the eastern side we should start to see a moon coming up in the next, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes, and when that moon then comes up, it's going to be incredibly bright tonight. So even though the wild dogs are more diurnal than they are nocturnal, in bright full moon times, these dogs will hunt. So they know that they can wait for it to get much cooler before they can then start trotting around and looking for food. The only problem is if they hunt in the night, is that hyenas are very active, and hyenas and wild dogs are mortal enemies. They will always be fighting with one another and going after one another. So that's why they will try and avoid hunting at night so that they don't have to compete with the hyenas nearly as much. Right, so we're going to stay with them a little bit longer, and I'm hoping that that moonrise is going to come up. And because the moon is going to start rising, it means that it's starting to get a little bit dark, which means that James and Herman, our two smaller presenters, given that they are so small, we should not really be leaving them out in the darkness. So we're going to go over to them so that they can say goodbye and get back to safety.
Yes, no, small people and in fact big people shouldn't be out in the dark. We're just walking along quarantine clearings and we can see some elephant tracks on top of our tracks from this afternoon. Here's Herbert's rather large foot there, and then here you can see where the elephant has walked. And we think he's probably down having a drink at the pan, which we're not going to walk to because it's getting a bit dark. So thank you very much for coming on our walk with us. Thank you, Herman, for your first walk. Herman says his shoulders are now numb, so we're going to go and take his pack off. We'll try and convince Louise to massage them for him. If she won't, I'm sure someone will. So until tomorrow, tomorrow's sunrise safari, from Herman and Herbert and James, it is a very fine goodbye.
Well, I'm glad James and his new shorts and shirt and shoes are mobile back to camp. We don't want anything happen to our dear James. He is getting a little bit older in the tooth, and his eyesight is probably not what it used to be, so it's better to get him home. The wild dogs are still very flat. They're still very sleepy. There's not too much happening with them at the moment. I think they are in a food coma at this stage. It's been one of those days. It's also been quite warm today, so maybe they've had a tough time digesting all of this big piles of impala that they ate and in dealing with that hot sun. So it's now time just to have a rest and enjoy this nice cool evening. The other nice thing is that the wind has really died down now and the temperature is absolutely perfect. So even for the dogs, you can see none of them are really panting. They're all actually looking really good. So they'll be quite happy dogs. And as I was explaining before we went to James, that the moonlight is going to help with them moving around tonight as well, which is good. But it's amazing how they move around. It's a little bit, and then they just find an area that they like. So Hunter, an interesting question, because you want to know how far wild dogs will hunt from a den site. Now, it's very dependent on the amount of food available close to the den site. So sometimes wild dogs will go quite far if they're not finding what they're needing, but generally they hunt quite close, because what they've got to do is they've got to get out, they've got to hunt, they've got to find the food, and then they've got to get back before they can feed it to the young ones. And while they're doing that, obviously the stomach acids are starting to digest, so they don't want to be miles and miles and miles away. So generally they hunt quite close. In the areas that I've worked with, we've had wild dog dens. Generally they're hunting within about, I would say, a 3 to 4 kilometer radius around the den. They don't go very far at all, and they then kill. And you'll find sometimes that they'll even split into different parties, and some will go hunt and they'll feed and they come back to feed the young ones while other ones go off and hunt. So they do fracture a little bit, but they don't go typically too far. Like I say, they also have to be quite close, because while they're away hunting, generally they leave an individual just to watch over the young ones when they're still small. And when they do that, if something arrives like a lion or hyenas, that individual will vocalize, and they need to be close enough that the rest of the pack can come in and try and save those little ones before they get killed. So it is very impertinent for them to be a little bit closer rather than further away. But I see every now and then that they're poking up their heads. I think that they know that it's that time of the day where the hyenas are going to start getting up, and they're just checking around to make sure that they don't get caught off guard while they lie out in the open. But it's amazing to have watched how they've moved from very long grass to more open sections. I'm sure it's because of the amount of insects that are in the grass. When we were walking last night and I got home, I was scraping off layers of pepper ticks as we moved, and so these guys, I'm sure, have been covered in ticks, and it's probably a lot easier to be lying out on the sand away from those ticks where they're not being bugged nearly as much. Also, without the wind or any sort of movement of the grass hitting you in the eyes or around the nose and sensitive areas, it's much more comfortable. But look at that face. Aren't they amazing? So the paws of wild dogs don't really differ from domestic dogs too much. They have a very similar structure, so they have the 4 toes, as you can see there, and then the small little back pad, and their claws are exposed. So unlike the cats that have the sheathed claw, the dogs have their claws out, and they use those for grip when they are running around and turning and chasing. And because they are not using their legs as much as what a lion or a leopard would be to be able to pin an animal, these guys tend to bite and then pull down and start to feed on that animal alive. They actually don't need much very, very sharp claws. They can have the blunted claw as opposed to what the cats need that sharp claw to hook into the skin of an animal and be able to then pull it down and get it to the ground. So their foot structure is very similar to a domestic dog. It's a slightly narrower footprint, but it again depends on the species of domestic dog. There are some domestic dogs that will have a very similar track or print to what the wild dogs will have. Now you may notice that all of these dogs have a very white tip to their tail. Now that white tip becomes really handy when they are moving. When these dogs run, they'll often go through long grass areas, and it's quite difficult to see one another. So they just lift that tail, and that white is a massive beacon for the rest of the pack to be able to see that white, and they then move in and are able to then join up back together again, particularly after a hunt, or if they've been successful with hunting and one has grabbed an animal, then the tails all go up and it's a frenzy, and they all get there and they can then see one another. So it's a really nice contrast to the rest of their body. The rest of their body is a little bit more mottled and camouflaged, but those big white tails just go across to the left. There's going to be a game that's going to be played there. There we go. So that one was just trotting in, and now there's a bit of biting going on. So I always love when the dogs start to do this, and I'm hoping that they start to stand up and they rear up on their back legs, and it's almost like 2 T-Rexes fighting. Miniature T-Rexes, but T-Rexes, they go up on their back legs and they play and they wrestle, and they actually stay up for quite long. So I'm hoping that they will do that just now, but for now it's rolling around time, biting each other's ears. That's also a favorite game if you're a wild dog, is to grab an ear and pull it and cause a bit of trouble. So look at the two of them having a nice little game together there, and this is all part of social bonding. So even though they are biting one another, they're just bonding with each other and making sure that they know if they do get separated that this is part of my pack and my family, that they can then rejoin and make sure that they're not chased away. That one's had enough. There's enough being bitten and being pulled by the ear. Time to move off a little bit. They've got such character, these animals, and I know why Brent loves them and why he considers them to be his favorite animal, because they are full of character, and they are actually one of my favorites too. I really do love leopards, but the dogs, in terms of a spectacle and in terms of just the way that they cooperate together and the fun that they tend to have, they really are quite something, and they're really entertaining to watch. I know this afternoon they've been quite stationary, but there's been lots of little nuances here and there where they've bitten one another and they're playing with one another, and there's been a little bit of cuddling with nose rubbing. So it's quite special to watch this family bond and to watch them move around. Or you could just be like that one and lie right on your back. I think there will be many a staff member that's going to be like that tonight in the DRC. Matsuri, you want to know how long the dogs will stay at a den before their pups are able to start joining in the hunting. Well, there's 2 different sides to that. So how long they stay in the den site is very dependent on the number of predators around. They will actually move dens if they feel like the den has been compromised, but in an ideal world it's generally about 3 to 4 months that they are den bound. So they stay in the den. From there they then start to move with the pack but get left behind when the pack starts to hunt. So if they're moving and all of a sudden they spot something, the young ones will lie down and the rest of the pack will go off chasing. If they kill something, they'll come back and call those young ones and take them in. So it only really starts to actually influence hunting behavior and start to actually get included in hunts when they reach about 7-8 months old. That's when they're almost fully fledged and basically contributing to the pack. And if you think that these dogs are only going to be alive, most of them, for 5 years or so, it's 8 months is 1/5 of their life. It's a pretty long period to be an adolescent. Now, I've also heard some good news on the radio. It sounds like the Nkahuma Pride and one of the Birminghams are up and moving off Simbambili. They're starting to move in a northeasterly direction, which will be towards our side. Now, I don't know if they're going to cross in the time that we still have this afternoon, but it might be worth, if Dave's around, to go and check up towards the Weirtela Access Triple M junction, because those lines should pop out there this evening sometime. It would be absolutely amazing if the Birminghams and Inkahuma lions did show face. They've been a little bit scarce the last few days, so it would be really nice to see them. So I'm hoping they do pop out, but it might be worth Dave just going to go and check there. So James, the size of a wild dog pack, it might have an effect on the distance that they travel. It's more about food availability. So the bigger the pack, the more food that they need, which means that they've got to spend a lot of time chasing, and they've got to find a lot of food. A smaller pack, they can survive on an impala here and there, whereas a pack of 40, they're going to be eating multiple impalas every single day. And so for them, they're going to actually have to cover much more ground trying to find enough food for them. So it's just dependent on food availability. In the Sabi Sands, we're very, very fortunate that we have a system that is very high population of prey species. So in this area, there's a lot of impala, a lot of steenbok, a lot of duiker, and they can hunt all of those. And so they actually don't have to move too far. This particular pack in the last 3 days has moved all of probably a kilometer. They haven't moved very, very much at all. But if you go into parts of Kalahari, let's say, or drier, more arid areas where there's not that high density of prey animals spread out like they are here, you'll find that the dogs can probably do much bigger distances, and their territory size is going to be massive. You'll end up with territories that are probably the size of the Sabi Sands for one pack, or maybe even bigger, whereas here the territories tend to be a little bit smaller. Currently in the Sabi Sands, we are seeing at the moment, if we count the dispersal packs, we are seeing now 6 different packs of wild dogs in the Sabi Sands, so that's quite a high number. And if you had to, like I say, go into the Kalahari area, which is the sort of northwestern side of South Africa, into Botswana, where it's a desert, arid conditions, there you would find that there would probably be only one pack in that same size area, if that. So it's a very, very, very different system. So it's more sort of food availability than pack number size, pack size number. Oh, got a bit tongue-tied there. Now, the thing is that what you will find is it's much like lions. If the pack gets too big with the amount of food, then you'll find that the pack will split. There will be younger males and females that will distribute out to go and see if they can find any signs of food, as well as to find and create their own packs. So it does happen quite a bit. We always used to think that packs were very settled, but they're not. There is a lot of movement amongst the packs. A very good friend of mine is the researcher for the wild dogs in the Kruger National Park, and he tells me about the movement of these dogs, and it's absolutely incredible. It's very difficult sometimes to actually know how to follow them. They move and they interchange between packs a lot. Now, I don't know if you guys saw that wild dog that was right in the front running up the road had a big gash on its ear. So the one right in front there has got a big gash, and the alpha male has a gash on his bum. Now this pack has had 2 run-ins in the last 2 mornings with 2 hyena clans. They've had big fights. They've been fighting away, and so that is in all likelihood caused maybe by a hyena that's grabbed this wild dog while the rest of the dogs were trying to defend it. So they have had a few run-ins, but they have definitely become interested in something. Those 2 dogs got up and walked up the road. Maybe they spotted an impala moving in the distance somewhere, or they heard something that they were just coming to check and make sure that they don't need to worry about anything. They see the one is now starting to come back, so whatever it was, they have not too much interest in it. So Rob, all the way from New Jersey, you want to know whether separate wild dogs will compete for territory and whether they'll fight with one another over it. Indeed they will. Wild dogs are very territorial, so they have an area and they will defend that quite aggressively from other wild dogs. They will make sure that they keep other wild dogs at bay. And I've actually seen this particular pack and the pack that I saw yesterday morning have a very big fight. They chased one another around. There was biting, there was vocalizing, and it was complete warfare. And then the next few months, neither one of them actually came back to this area. One went way north into the Manyeleti and the other went south into the Sabi Sands area. But you can see they've gotten very alert now, so something is definitely maybe scared these dogs is what I would say. Is their demeanor is now very alert. They're not so much hunting. You can see they're all getting up to move now. So I think they're a bit concerned that there's something around. Maybe they picked up the sound of a hyena moving somewhere in the distance, and with the vehicle now moving, they think that maybe the hyenas are coming in as well. So that could be why that they're so alert as to what's going on. There's some of them are starting to play again. Oh, and might be a blessing in disguise. There's going to be another one, I think, that's going to come and greet. But these two, look at them. They're having the most marvelous time. Typical youngsters. When you're a young teenager, it's all about playing and wrestling and causing trouble with one another. And this is all valuable for later in life. These guys are going to utilize this when they try and wrestle an animal down to the ground, or if they have to defend themselves from things like hyenas and lion and leopard. They will be able to use their biting and turning, and they'll be a lot more agile. And also they're training themselves. They're getting stronger necks and muscles around the shoulders by doing this. So it's all very, very important. Oopsie, that one just got a bottom in its face. Now, it is getting to that time where it's starting to get quite dark, and it's going to be a little bit too dark for us to stay with them for too much longer. So we're probably going to spend another 5 or so minutes with them and try and see if that moon is going to rise in the background. Reese, you want to know how intelligent wild dogs are? Well, I can tell you that they are very intelligent. I've watched wild dogs hunting. I've watched wild dogs in ambush situations and situations where they've fought with hyenas, where they've made the hyena even look quite stupid by running around it and using the pack to attack from different angles. So they are quite intelligent animals. They know what's going on. Their biggest downfall, though, is unfortunately when they feed. Now, when they feed, they're not very intelligent. So if you just had to find something like a leopard will be quite stealthy when it feeds. So it will drag its kill into a thicket, and it will chew and eat quite quietly. Whereas these guys, when they feed, it's just absolute pandemonium, and everybody's in and shouting, and there's lots of little giggles and noise coming from them, and that attracts a lot of other predators. Other predators hear that, and they know the wild dogs have got food, so they're going to come in and they're going to try and start attacking them. So that's probably a sign that they're not that intelligent around food. But in terms of their daily existence and moving around, they're very susceptible to the environment. They have incredible senses, so their ears are massive. They trap a lot of sound with those ears, good sense of smell, good eyesight, and they often spot predators long before you do. I've followed wild dogs on multiple occasions and seen them chase leopards up trees, and they spot the leopard long before we ever do. So they are quite intelligent when it comes to that. And then, like I say, the way that they hunt and the way that they are able to work out that this panic tactic that they use is beneficial for them and makes them quite successful in terms of gaining food and keeping the pack alive. Now, it's interesting to know that I was talking to Grant, and he was telling me, who is the wild dog researcher, and he was telling me about the success rates of wild dogs. Now, everybody always thinks that wild dogs are the most successful predator in terms of the fact that they kill a lot of animals. While this is true, they do kill a lot, and in terms of the number of kills that they make, it's probably a lot more than other predators, but their success rate is actually not that very good. It's about as good as what you would see from a leopard. They have about a 40% success rate. It's just that they chase so many different animals that they're able to then catch one, and that is then deemed a feeding session. So they're able to caught food in the morning or the afternoon hunt, but they've failed maybe 4 or 5 times before they've actually caught the meal that they're looking after. So in terms of if you had to break it down into individual hunts and what constitutes an individual hunt, they're actually not very successful. But in terms of a hunting session, they normally are very, very successful. So shows a little bit of intelligence too. Alright, so like I say, we're probably going to be leaving these wild dogs fairly shortly. I'm going to sit for another 5 minutes just to see if this moon does indeed come up over them, because I think it will be quite spectacular. But if it doesn't within the next 5 minutes, then I think we're going to leave them be and let them enjoy the coolness of the night. But while we do that, let's go across to David and see how he's doing.
Well, it's getting dark now, but we've just got some very exciting information. We've heard that lions are crossing from Sibumbile into the Juma section. So we're pinning it along this road and we're hoping to get there before we lose them. We've got all our lights on, the brights are on, and we're going to get there as quickly as possible and hopefully get some lions. This time of the evening there's a lot of small insects which myself and Brian have been capturing with our eyes, and also I think I've eaten one or two as well. Midges, or in South Africa we call them muggies. Not very pleasant to have in your eye. Need to pay attention to the road. Driving quickly like this, we never know what's going to jump out. The lion's on the move. The best thing to do is get there quickly. Sean asked, how can you identify a male lion's call? Well, you can never put a lion in a box. Oh no, wait. Sean's asked, can I produce a male lion's call? Well, wait, that sounded like a, I don't know, an angry elephant maybe. Definitely not a male lion, Sean, but that was it, eh? I'm gonna have to try and find you a real male lion. One will go. I think that sounded like a constipated elephant, but I'm not a lion. Thank you, Sean. Right, well, I pay attention on the road as we're racing towards these lions. We're going to switch back to Tristan and here's some wild dogs.
So, as I wanted, there above the tree line is a beautiful full moon that is just coming over these wild dogs, and isn't that spectacular? So those of you that love to do screenshots, this is a prime time to do a screenshot. You can send them through to us at #safariLIVE. It would be great to see some of those. That is an incredible scene. Now, I know Taylor had it yesterday, but I don't think I can get tired of a full moon over a pack of wild dogs. That is quite special. Isn't that incredible? Now, you can also hear in the distance that the nocturnal birds are starting. I can hear a scop's owl calling. Very far away, but it is calling, and those sounds of the night are starting to come up. But isn't that spectacular? Look at that. That is amazing. I think that is one of my favorite wild dog sightings. That full moon is absolutely spectacular. Now, tomorrow the full moon is going to be amazing, because this afternoon the full moon has come up after the sun is set, whereas tomorrow the full moon will come up pretty much at the same time. So it's going to come up as a big orange ball over that horizon, so it will be far prettier than what we're seeing now. But isn't that spectacular? You can just see it now, perfectly coming over that ridge of trees, and even the wild dogs are admiring the view. Look at them all turning towards the full moon. Isn't that incredible? Well, guys, I can tell you what, you guys complete the picture as well. So Diane, your question is quite relevant because you want to know where they're going to sleep tonight. Right where we see them right now. So this is probably in all likelihood, if they're not going to use the full moon and move around, then they'll in all likelihood rest here. It's nice and open here. They'll be able to see any sort of hyena or lion or leopard coming through this open grass, and they'll then be able to bolt away. So generally they find a nice open section, and that is where they spend the night. In dark nights, they'll find even bigger open clearings than this. So where the airstrip is on Arethusa, that's a perfect place for wild dogs to go sleep during the night, and they'll then lie there. And then as soon as there's that first little bit of light coming over the horizon, they're up and moving already. So that's how they do it. If there's the den site, then like you say, they will go back to the den site and they sleep there for the night. Now, as much as I would love just to sit here and to admire this beautiful view with these wild dogs and the full moon, it is very, very dark, and I do not want to attract any attention to these wild dogs and attract any hyenas by being here. So I think it's that time of the evening where we are going to probably leave the wild dogs and leave them to themselves. We're definitely going to try and come again tomorrow morning and see if we can find them. So while we get going and go and see what else we can find this evening, let's go across to David and see how the lion search is going.
Alright, our lion search is not going very well. We're in the right area, but we have not managed to find any tracks. Got the lights out, spotlights operational. We're making our way towards a dam now. Of course, lions love to set up ambushes close to dams. Of course, when animals come to drink, it's a perfect time for lions to surprise them. But the bush is very thick. We haven't managed to find any tracks, and so all we can do is push on and keep searching. It's a lovely warm evening and the moon is rising. Perfect weather. Oh! It's not a lion, but it will do. Okay, let's not approach him too quickly. I don't want to startle him. In front of us, it looks like we have a giraffe. From here, it would appear to be a male giraffe. He's moving off. We're going to slowly approach. Don't want to upset him. The Afrikaans name for a giraffe is kameelperd, meaning camel horse. So the giraffe walks with 2 legs on the left and 2 on the right, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. But when it runs, it swaps over to 2 in the front and 2 at the back, and it tends to have the gait of a horse. Brian, you might get an awesome silhouette shot of that giraffe disappearing. Kameelperd. Walks like a camel, but it runs like a horse. Okay, we've lost that giraffe, and so we're going to push on now and see if we can find those lions, or at least find their tracks, and that would give us an indication of where they're going. Let's get my spotlight out again. The moon is so bright, I'm sure as soon as it's over the horizon, it's going to provide a lot of light for us. Oh, bird just popped out in front of me. It looked like a thickney. Bush is getting very dense over here. Checking the road for tracks. I don't see anything. Wow, I can hear frogs. David wants to know, is a giraffe a target for lions? That's a good question. Yes. Lions, if they can cause a giraffe to panic and fall or trip and slip, then they have a chance of getting to it. But a giraffe is actually quite a powerful and agile creature, with a male weighing just over a ton and sometimes standing at 5.5 meters tall. They are more than capable of defending themselves. If giraffes see lions, they'll actually move towards them. Sorry, it's just very bumpy here. Let me slow down a bit. If a giraffe sees a group of lions, a pride, they will move towards them. I've seen giraffe approach lions on a kill and stand no less than 5 meters and just stare down at the giraffe. Can see the lions, can defend itself. They karate chop with the front legs, and they'll even kick out to the sides with the back legs. So a wise lion has a healthy respect for giraffe. But if they can cause the giraffe to somehow lose his footing, we've got some crowned lapwing taking off in front of us. If they can get a hold of the giraffe's throat and neck area, then they've got it. And so quite often I've actually seen giraffe missing tails. So they just have a stump. And what causes that is sometimes a lioness will chase after a giraffe. Giraffe will panic and run away, and she will bite right up onto the base of the tail and hang on there, gripping with her forelimbs and using her back limbs to try and trip up the giraffe. The giraffe will respond by bucking and kicking and then run right into some very thick vegetation and try and brush that lion off. And sometimes, unfortunately, with the powerful jaws of a lion, it can cause the giraffe to lose a bit of its tail. But I think it's a sacrifice that a giraffe is willing to make to live another day. Okay, well, we continue our search for lions in this thick, dark bush. You're going to go back to Tristan. Let's see what he's got.
Well, what we have is one of the most spectacular scenes that I've seen in a long time. There are these beautiful big dead knob thorns that are making this eerie, beautiful moonrise, and in between all of them is that big golden sphere of a moon that is coming up over the horizon. It is absolutely spectacular. I cannot tell you how pretty it looks, and that coupled with the beautiful sounds of the night and this orange horizon to our west over the Drakensberg Mountains, it is a beautiful, beautiful setting, that is for sure. It's almost like you just want to sit out here and just turn off everything and spend time in the quiet listening, which is, I think, what we should do. Now that is, like I say, an incredible vista to look upon and gaze upon. There is an atmosphere attached to that that, like I say, I can't quite describe. Now, we are going to carry on though, because we are quite far from home and it's time to start heading back in that direction. Otherwise I'm going to get back very late. And the camp staff will not be very happy with me if I'm not in time for dinner. So let me start making my way back that way. But what an incredible afternoon. It was a little bit slow to start with tracking the dogs. We had to kind of go back and forth and crash through some thickets, but eventually it paid off and it was spectacular. Like I said, it actually worked in our favor because we got there at the right time to have that beautiful golden light on them as the sun was setting, and then into this spectacular moonrise that we've just experienced over the top of them. So it was perfect timing, and I reckon that we're going to get rewarded with something else on the way home. I have a good vibe for tonight. What do you think, Ryan? Think we're going to get something? Good. I reckon I'm going to go along our southern boundary and I'm going to look for Athena. I'm glad you enjoyed that moonrise with the sounds of nature. It is quite spectacular. Like I said, just sitting here was quite something. It was absolutely beautiful just to sit for that moment and just take in those sounds and listen to what was going on around us and just watch that moon slowly but surely come up over the horizon. Now I forgot that I have to use my spotlight, so the spotlight is a little bit wide because I was trying to illuminate the trees for you to make it a little bit more moody, so I just need to tighten that up, which I've done now. And now we can start scanning for eyes. So we're using the spotlight to look for any signs of little glowing eyes in the darkness. And this road that we're actually on is a good road for the animal that I'm really looking for at night. Now, there are a number of different animals, and with other nights, lots of you were telling me what you would love to see, and we had porcupines and pangolin and aardvark and all of those. And my one that I want to see is a caracal. Now, this road that we're on, at this very junction, a caracal was last seen here. This was actually the last sighting of a caracal that I know of in this area, and it was about, I would say now, about 4 or 5 months ago. And when I used to work at Chitwa, there was actually a caracal that used to hang around Arethusa airstrip, and that caracal was very, very relaxed. It was a calm individual, and the guys used to get it hunting quite often. So we've got a little bronze-winged courser in the road. Hello, buddy. I don't want to blind it with my spotlight, but you can see it just sitting in the road. It's one of those nocturnal birds, and there it goes. And that caracal used to sit, sorry, I'll go back to the caracal story. The caracal used to go on the airstrip, and the guys used to often find it hunting there, and they used to follow it much like a leopard. And every time I tried to get to that caracal, as I would get there, they would lose it and it would be gone. So I am definitely trying to find a caracal somewhere around here, and maybe tonight is the night. Maybe we get lucky. Although I think any caracal here is going to be a very brave one, because this is right in the heart of Tingana and Shadows territory, and both of those will be a major threat to a caracal. We've just got to make sure no oncoming traffic. So Ollie, the moon is indeed spectacular, and you're wondering if we're going to notice any different patterns of behavior with the animals. Indeed. So we're going to get a lot of different behavior from different animals. Elephants tend to become a lot more active and a lot more vocal for some reason in full moon periods. I've seen them moving around, and they make quite a bit of noise at night. Now, I'm just trying to go slowly because I saw some eyes crossing the road here. It could be a little steenbok or a duiker. Now, unfortunately, the bush that we're in here is very, very thick, but sometimes you get little jennets that go up and scurry into a tree, and you can actually see them. But it went in here somewhere where it's a little bit too thick to actually see. So yeah, elephants will be a lot more active. You'll find wild dogs, they generally are not hunting at night and not moving around too much at night, whereas in full moon period, they could potentially be out and moving and running around. Then you've got the lions and the leopards are going to struggle a little bit. They're going to be actually far less active in terms of hunting, because with the full moon, it's so bright that all the other prey animals can actually see quite clearly what's going on. It's even for us as humans, if you come out on a full moon night and you turn off all the lights and you sit there for 15 minutes and you let your eyes adjust, you can actually drive around here without lights and you'll be able to see the roads and see where you're going. So for predators, it becomes a lot harder to hunt. The lions and leopards have a lot less success in these full moon periods. And then you'll find that also the prey animals, they tend to actually do a little bit of feeding during the night. So it's not uncommon to find buffalo feeding or zebras feeding, whereas in the cold new moon period, often those animals are just hunkering down and trying to find an open section that they're able to just watch out for predators. Right, so we're going to continue our search for the elusive caracal, and while we do that, let's go across to David and see if he's having any luck with some nocturnal creatures.
Another one. Okay, we got an update that the lions have gone flat cat in an area that we cannot reach. It's too thick, it's too dense, so we have moved out of that area now. We're continuing on our search. We're seeing a lot of really cool nocturnal birds, some thickneys, bronze-winged coursets on the road. But we're looking for eyes. We're using the spotlight. I'm looking for any eyes glaring back at me. It's a lovely warm evening here in the Sabi Sands. The moon is starting to illuminate the bush, but we're hot. We're looking for anything at this stage. Looking up in the trees, hoping to maybe spot a bush baby, a lesser galago. It's time for them to become active and start hopping about from tree to tree. And you know what else you can find with a spotlight at this time of the night? Is a chameleon. Chameleons show up almost like a little bit lighter than the leaves that they're on, almost like a white color. It takes, I think, a bit of a trained eye to spot them. But with a spotlight, you can, sorry, I just got a bug in my mouth. You can actually spot chameleons using the spotlight. So I would love to see a flap neck chameleon. In the Eastern Cape, we mostly get dwarf chameleons. The flap neck is quite a bit larger. So it would be fantastic to find one. Come on, chameleons. I'm really impressed with these vehicles. Kitted out with extra spotlights, which is really just helping me right now. I'm still working the handheld spotlight, but these extra LEDs are helping to illuminate the bush for me. Oh, bit of a rough section here. Let me slow down. Don't want Brian to fall off the back. He's done so well. He survived my driving. I think I recognize this area. I think this is quarantine. I really like this area. It's wide open, grassy area with tall trees. We're going to continue working the spotlight, see what else we can spot. It's getting very quiet at this stage. I can hear the cicadas starting to call. It's a small insect. I'm going to turn in here. Oh, I see a light. Eyes. Okay, we seem to have a herd of something. It's important not to completely put the spotlight onto, which I kind of did, not directly into the eyes of prey species. Okay, so we're just going to put the light on the ground here. It says not to put it directly in their eyes. Okay, you can just see those eyes over there. Not very clear, and I can just make out that those are impalas. I don't want to put the spotlight on them because that could blind them and give predators a competitive advantage over them, and we don't want that. Alright, we're going to leave these impalas now, and I'm going to say my goodbye. Thank you very much for joining me on my interview drive, and we're going to send you over to Tristan now. Goodbye.
So, sorry guys, I have no lights there because I was just having a chat to some of the guides in the area. There's a lot of guys that I've guided with for many years that I haven't seen for the last few weeks. So it's just nice to catch up with all of them and see how they're all doing and say hello and maintain the good friendly banter that we have going around here and keep spirits high. And I was also trying to wear these elusive like Karula's tracks are coming north up towards Twin Dams along the Mulawati area, and no sign of Hosana, so I think they're somewhere there. I also got a good news report right now that Tundi and her cub have also come back to Chipper, so it looks like the morning should hold some promise, which is great news. I was kind of hoping that I was going to bump into Karula along the southern boundary and that she was going to just grace us with her presence in this last dying bit of light that we have in the last moments of drive, but alas, it hasn't happened, and that is the way things go. Oh, sorry about the bumps, everyone. We're on this road, and because of the trucks that drive here to do deliveries to the lodges, they tend to cause a bit of corrugation, and the corrugations make the camera bounce a little bit, so I do apologize if there's a bit of a bouncy feed coming towards you. I'm shortly going to be turning off it anyway. But what a spectacular evening it's been. That moon was just something unbelievable. I absolutely enjoyed seeing that moon rising over the dogs. What a special sighting. And to see wild dogs is always quite something. So I'm really over. So I'm